Boom. I think that means we're live. I'm going to post the final hey, we're live tweet. Hey, we're live, everybody. And that just went out. I hope it's got all the right hashtags and all that stuff. Sweet. And I'm going to start in just a second. All right. Hello and welcome to the PHP Roundtable podcast, which is the PHP podcast where everyone chimes in. We're just a bunch of random developers discussing ideas about web development, and not all people at the roundtable are specifically PHP developers, and that's a good thing because different languages and communities tackle problems very differently, and the ultimate goal of this podcast is to learn from each other. So we have one rule. We will not assume that anyone listening to the podcast is an expert PHP programmer, and therefore we are not allowed to just jargon drop without explaining ourselves. So we'll try to do our best to kind of cover things at least enough to where you can Google them later if you're interested in learning more. So if you're listening live, check us out on Twitter. We're PHP Roundtable, or just submit a tweet to hashtag PHP Roundtable asking a question or leaving some feedback, and we'll try to pull you into the show via Twitter. And since this is our 4th episode officially, we are going to start doing syndication, so you can check it out on iTunes, but that probably won't be coming for about 2 more weeks. But it will be an official podcast after this episode, hopefully, on iTunes. So today we are talking all about APIs, and it's a very broad term, application programming interface. It covers a lot of things, but we're talking specifically today about web APIs. We're going to be exploring terms like REST and JSON. What you need to do to design your API, consuming an API from the PHP perspective, and consuming an API from the client-side perspective, and then ultimately at the end, sort of asking a question about this idea of moving our app domain logic into the client side, and we're seeing a lot more scripts being these one-page apps that are very JavaScript intensive. So we're going to explore that idea a little bit more. So let's get right to the people that are joining us here, these expert, awesome, amazing people who decided to be brave and come on the PHP Roundtable even after seeing last episode's kind of horrible thing that happened at the worst con. We won't mention what happened, but there was drunken debauchery galore. So this one is not going to be like that. This is most everyone here I think is sober. Our first, just at a random, I'm just going in a random, not in any specific order, but first person we'll get to is Matt Frost, who wrote a book on Auth, which is very important when it comes to APIs, so it makes him very appropriate for this talk. And he ran 4 marathons recently. Is that right?
Relatively recently, yeah, in the last couple of years.
So you're really in shape then.
Something like that.
Nice. Well, welcome. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Next guy up, we're gonna hit up Jeremy Lindblom, who is a software engineer at AWS. He's a co-organizer of the Seattle PHP user group, and he told me that one time he kissed a kangaroo, and I kind of need a backstory on that one.
Well, I wish it was more entertaining, but I went to a petting zoo where there happened to be a small kangaroo, and I actually kissed the kangaroo with the intention that I would later be able to tell people that I kissed a kangaroo.
Where did you kiss this kangaroo?
It was at a petting zoo at some fair, I think.
No, I mean on what part of the body?
Oh, on the top of the head, of course.
Okay, good. You didn't bring any diseases back then. So. We also have Mike Stowe on, who he works for API. We actually work with a company that deals with APIs pretty much every day. So that makes you really appropriate to come on board. And you're also an actor, you say. So what do you do? Are you in some Hollywood movies?
Next year, yes. There's one coming out. But I just don't think I can top kissing a kangaroo. I regret that.
That's hilarious. All right, and we also have Keith Casey on. He wrote a book on API design and trained 2 cats to fetch. I don't even know what that means.
Are you familiar with the game Fetch? You throw something, they bring it back.
So, yeah, of course.
Yeah, teaching cats to do that is amazing because cats are kind of independent creatures and they're kind of a pain in the ass. So getting them to do anything on command is pretty impressive. So I've had fun. I've done it twice now, so I think I've got a system in place. So if you ever have a cat fetching need, let me know and I'll take care of it.
Awesome. Yeah, cats are traditionally very stubborn, so I think it would require a lot of patience. So I'm glad you figured out some sort of method behind that.
Hey, we're all good at something.
Yep. Exactly. And finally, we got a ton of people here. We got Andrew Carrizo, No, I'm sorry, Curioso. I have a pronunciation key, and I think I got it right that second time.
There you
Author
go.
of Expert PHP and MySQL, a book that he wrote, organizer of the New Hampshire PHP meetup, and really into home automation with PHP, right?
Yeah, I wish. No. C, C++, not very much PHP. But, APIs, PHP all the way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome, everyone. Actually, before we even dive
am I
in,
the only one that hasn't written a book?
I haven't written a book.
Me either.
I'm about to buy some ISBN numbers, but I haven't written anything for him. So you and me, Jeremy, we can be the non-book people.
Solidarity.
Yes, absolutely. Before we start getting too hardcore into the discussion, I want to hit up a couple people on Twitter who have been giving some feedback already. In the introduction, Mike Wilbanks is asking if Mike is wearing a Blue Bunny shirt. What is your shirt?
Okay, so that's actually our mule for MuleSoft. It's this guy. Really, just not as cool.
That's a beautiful little mule there. That's awesome. Yeah, so not a bunny shirt. It does look like the Playboy bunny from the top, because it's being cropped off a little bit. And then Bill Wheeler is saying a much more sober-looking crew on this episode of PHP Roundtable. And yes, I think most of us are mostly sober. And then Jeremy Mikola, who was on last episode, was reminding us that most people on the WorstCon last episode, were actually sober. The only two really drunk people were me and Phil Sturgeon. So that was Phil was actually making sense, and I was just I was completely useless. So, all right, let's jump right into it. But first, let's get to a definition of whatever an API is. So, who wants to take this one? What would you say? Just the overview, the TLDR version. What is an API?
I'll jump on this one. I think fundamentally, API in the lowest common denominator sense of the word is the way two pieces of software talk to one another. When we talk about APIs at a library level, I mean, that applies that definition. We're talking about REST APIs specifically. We're talking about those that use and follow sort of the REST principles. And there's 6 to 10, depending on how you want to count them. But there's kind of a continuum in there of how RESTful is something. And it's fundamentally how do things talk to one another.
Cool. And you mentioned something about REST, and then we're going to get to that a little bit later. Is there anybody else who has any input on just what a general higher view of API is?
Yeah, I can go up a few more 1,000 feet. So, at a high level, API is a little like a contract. You have a contract between a provider and a consumer, and it's essentially a defined set of rules and language where you talk between those two parties. And I like that analogy because there's some things that have to do with the contract analogy goes a long way in explaining things like, okay, you can do something like break backwards compatibility, right? But you're kind of breaking the contract a little bit. You're kind of not being fair to the other side of that contract and that agreement. So, a few levels higher, a few more 1,000 feet.
Cool. Why would an average PHP nerd need to know about APIs? Do they even need to know about APIs? Is that too much of a broad question?
Can you even write a PHP program without using APIs anymore? Non-trivial? It's tough.
I think part of the problem is the way the world is connecting today, where everything is becoming connected to something else. So eventually, if you write an application, you're going to need it to connect to Twilio or to Twitter or to any other numerous applications. You're going to need to connect to other systems, other services. So can you write a PHP application without using an API? Yes. Should you? No. I mean, we should be using API-first design. But as the world grows, I mean, connections is what's all about now.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like maybe a developer who's just throwing like random scripts together might not even know that they're dealing with API stuff when they install a package like the AWS SDK and they're sending files around to S3 and all that stuff. They might not necessarily do any nitty-gritty figuring out what the API is all about. So is there any real advantage to learning how to design or interface with APIs for just a random run-of-the-mill developer?
Well, I think it's absolutely necessary to understand how to interact with APIs, to sort of have an idea of here are the error states that can come up, here are the problems that sort of crop up, here's what success looks like. I think designing APIs isn't necessarily quite as important because there will be quite a few less people designing APIs than consuming them. Like, for example, I spent 2.5 years at Twilio. The team there had probably 4 or 5 API designers, but then they had 200, 300,000 users. And so those people didn't necessarily need to know how to design the API, they just needed to know how to consume it.
And that's a good point. You've got two sides of this API story. We got designing awesome APIs on one hand, and we have consuming APIs on the other. And I didn't put the word awesome in consuming APIs because a lot of times dealing with APIs can be annoying. And we'll look at some of those a little bit later. But let's. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that before we move on to some going into some more of the nitty-gritty details of what an API looks like?
Yeah, I want to just point out too, when you when you move to an API from kind of a I guess more traditional persistence type environment with databases, you give yourself a lot more flexibility with being able to take your data into the mobile world, into different I guess contexts maybe is the word I'm looking for. But when you're interacting with code and data in kind of I'll call it a PHP 4 web application, that's the only place that it's going to run is on that web server, and by by kind of separating breaking that dependency with the web server and getting it kind of into an API, you give yourself a lot more options for how you can use that data.
So my next startup idea, instead of just creating a PHP website for it, if I make an API that backs that up, I can make, say, a mobile app for it, right? Or like a native mobile app, or tie it into some other service.
Yep.
Cool. So that's yet another reason to learn how to design and make your API, to make millions of dollars, basically, is the TLDR version, I suppose.
So I was going to say something about consuming APIs, but we'll probably talk more about that later. But I think one thing that's different about when you're consuming APIs for your data rather than maybe talking through a database is that there's different ways. Well, you have to treat it a little bit differently because an API it might have reliability issues more so than working with your database. So you're going to have to deal with what to do when it doesn't respond or it responds with something you didn't expect. And so sometimes even with client libraries that over the top of an API, you still have some leaky abstractions that come up that you have to know how to deal with as a consumer.
And what do you mean by leaky abstractions? Exactly.
So that's what I mean is like those errors. So like when you talk to a database, most of the time with like our PHP, MySQL, and PDO extensions, the errors that happen, the types of errors are pretty low. There aren't very many to worry about. But with an API, there can be any number of errors defined by the API, and depending on how you're consuming that API, some of those errors could be thrown right up as an exception into your application level. So there's different ways of dealing with that, and different ways that people design how they interact with their APIs to deal with that kind of thing.
Definitely, and I feel like there's been some attempts to sort of standardize the way that APIs return responses, how to handle those responses, and things like that. And I think we'll be talking a little bit about that in just a second. If we wanted to do a quick rundown of what an API, web API, looks like, we look at things like the HTTP protocol. We have HTTP verbs like get, put, post, delete. We have HTTP response status codes. We have request and response headers. We have the body of those responses and requests. In a sort of nutshell, what does all of that look like, and how does it relate to API at the very bare bones basic API structure? And anybody can take this.
Wow, you just started with an easy question, huh? No, I think it's about using the medium properly. No, he doesn't have a chance doing that. I think it's all about using the medium properly. The verbs are designed for very specific purposes, and using those in accordance with those purposes. I think the response codes are very specific. Using the proper response codes. Like Jeremy was saying, this isn't just a database application where we can just fire off a request and just assume that it's going to get handled. At the end of the day, when we're talking about API architectures and API systems, we're talking about distributed systems where things like latency come into play, where systems and resources might just disappear and go away, and you never know what happens.
Yeah, you have to design for failure big time when you're...
Yeah, absolutely. And I usually recommend that people design for the failure cases first, because they're the most painful, but if you understand the failure cases, success is the easy one.
Yeah, so I would like to maybe go run through a scenario of what a typical API request response looks like, and maybe that would be a good way to sort of encompass a lot of these ideas. Real quick, I'm going to interrupt and say Lee Davis just said that my mic is totally boss, so thanks. It's a blue snowball, and I got it for really cheap. It was on sale, so that's why I've got this specific one. And Jeremy McCullough is still on a pun rant. He just said, when working
is this
with...
one about cheese?
Oh, you know what? I thought it was going to be something about worsts, because that was been worse all the time. He says, when working with APIs, proper error handling is no exception. Yeah, that was funny.
I don't get it.
Tell him to give it a rest.
Give it a rest, Jeremy. Give it a rest. We have no more puns. Oh, this is going crazy. So, can anybody run us through like a typical, like we're using the HTTP protocol? What does that look like in an API sort of request and response scenario?
Anybody have a whiteboard?
You have a whiteboard? It doesn't. You could tell it in the form of a story, maybe like a little puppy went into a house, kind of thing. It doesn't have to be necessarily super technical, but just enough that people could kind of get the general idea of like, okay, that's kind of how it works. This request and response. Maybe two people talking. What's involved with that kind of thing? Making up a sort of scenario like that on the fly.
Well, I think the contract analogy was a good one. I think you've got a service that you're trying to use or consume. And it has rules, it has kind of a structure as to how you need to use it. And, generally speaking, the verbs are, for the most part, pretty self-explanatory. If you're trying to get a resource from that service, you have to follow the rules that are associated with retrieving a resource, which is generally a GET request. If you're trying to give the resource information, typically that's either a post or a put or a patch, and then delete, obviously. But you have these rules, and generally the API documentation. Hopefully, you have API documentation that explains kind of what you have, and what you need to send. So as long as you can send the information in a way that kind of fits that contract that the service will accept and be able to act on, it will give you back what you asked for, whether it's actual data or kind of a status or a result from information that you might have pushed up there.
And if, in terms of like a web browser, for example, that most people are familiar with, if they're sitting there browsing a website, is there some sort of API type thing going on using the HTTP protocol? Like, what is the browser doing behind the scenes that we don't see?
So
go ahead, Keith.
At the highest level, it's making the request, and it's sending off some headers. It sends off headers along the lines of, here's the operating system I'm using, here's the browser, the user agent I'm using, along with here's the content types I can accept. Like I'm expecting back HTML or text or images or something like that. And then the server on the other side accepts that what's called is the accepts header. It reads that and says, okay, can I respond in any of these particular formats? If it is, then it keeps going. If it can't, then there's what's called a 415 error. It's a media type not supported. So it can immediately say, look, I don't speak the same language as you, so we need to stop. Assuming that you do speak the same language, then it can go ahead and it can take that incoming request and like Matt said, if it's a GET, it can retrieve objects from whatever your data store is or retrieve resources and return those back to you. Generally, it would return back with a 200. So if you're looking at a blog post, it would make that request, load the database, load the page, return the body of the page itself, and then return the headers. And that in the headers, it would say 200 OK. And then it would give some information about the server, like this is Apache, this is the timestamp, stuff like that. It also return back like caching information. And all the headers are totally transparent to the user. The user never sees any of the headers. What the user just sees is the body, and that's where everyone knows it's the HTML tags and the body and the body tag and all that sort of stuff.
Cool. And you said no one sees the headers, and those are kind of what the browser uses to communicate with the server to figure out what it's getting, right?
Yeah.
So-
yeah. It's the communication layer behind the scenes.
Using
Go
an
ahead,
API
Andrew.
isn't really any different.
Go ahead.
It's doing the same thing as the browser, except most of the time when you're interacting with an API, you are worried about what the headers are.
Yeah.
Well, most of the, for the most part, a web browser over HTTP is essentially a RESTful API, all the way down to having hypermedia to describe, to transition through states. And I do not want to be the one who brings up Helios and has to define that for the first time here.
Oh, don't you worry, it's coming.
So, but I want to try something really stupid for the people who really have no idea about APIs, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And if this is terrible, then you can cut it out before it gets to iTunes.
Sweet.
All right, go role play. Who wants to
Yay.
be my server? Come on, volunteers.
Oh, I'm down for this.
Yay, Mike's
Mike
down.
volunteer.
Mike's the server.
Yes.
He's an actor. He's got it.
Yes, this is true.
Excellent.
All right, so you are, you're a server for, let's say, a micro message social media service called, I don't know, Chirper or something. That's probably a real startup somewhere, so I apologize for that.
Everything is a real startup.
So anyway, I want to get a list of messages from you. Let's say a public timeline or whatnot. So let's say I'm gonna request request HTTP whatever.com example.com/timeline. I'm gonna make a GET request to that. I'm gonna send you a user agent, and I'm gonna send you, which is of course Internet Explorer, the best browser ever. And please, no one think I'm serious. And I'm going to send you accepts application/block semicolon application/JSON, and you're going to give me back. I wish I could throw a ball at you, like a physical ball, but I probably won't reach.
And these are your headers, right? That you're talking
Yeah.
about. This is stuff that people
Yeah.
don't see.
I'm doing a GET request, so it's all headers, all headers in the URL. So now the server is not being very responsive, so I need to worry about that in my
There's
application.
downtime there. So I take it with the server. I say, okay, he's sending me this request. It's a GET request, and he accepts JSON. I can give him back JSON because I have that format. So I'm going to take your GET request, send back the response, and back the header saying this is 200 okay. Here's your data. Have a nice day, and hopefully I'll stay up the remainder of the time.
So
Nice.
so I'm going to get back my JSON request. I'm going to parse the JSON. If there's a header saying I should cache or whatnot, I might do that just to make myself a little bit more responsive. And then let's say hypothetically I want to send a new message. If I want to send a new message, I'm probably going to make a post request. Post being the verb to timeline, and that is going to have a body of the message in it, and that body is going to be maybe hypothetically a JSON object with the text of my short little micro message and who I and whatever else. I'm not going to design microservice API on the fly. That's not going to work. Anyway, let's just say I post to Mike here a JSON object that has a message in it, and the message is 200 characters long, and you only let me have messages up to 100 characters long.
What does that response look like?
That
You
gives
believe
you
that's a 410? I believe that's a 410 entity too large. Isn't that
Oh, look
410?
at this.
I like that one.
Knows all the status codes.
Oh, see, I probably would have done a 400 and just, had a nice descriptive error response, but I like that one better.
That's awesome. So basically what they're
420.
talking about is there's different HTTP status codes that a server can respond with, and they're just these numbers, and each one has basically a range of what they can, what they mean. So the 200s, so like 201, 200, 201, 202, those are all successful error codes. That means whatever happened, it was good. Then there's the 300s, which it has to do with like redirecting and things like that. There's 400s, which means there was an error, and 500s, which means there was like a really bad error. So there's different ways that a server can respond. So that's really, thank you very much for that analogy. I think that really helps to kind of, for the person who's completely new to API design, to kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes. So from going forward, let's just get a few more terms really defined, and then we're going to talk about a couple of best practices with designing an API. In a typical application that you're designing for, say, like a WordPress website, you have an endpoint, which is a URL, right? And someone goes to look at your blog, and your blog will return an XML document, which is called HTML. And the browser will render that HTML and format a nice little pretty blog post all about whatever you're talking about. And an API that you might design for some other service to use, it might not return an XML document, but it can return other formats, including a really popular format, JSON. So why is JSON better than XML? I'm just going to throw that out there. I know it's a weighted question. It's a biased question, I should say.
Is
it?
No, I mean, I know in my experiences, and I would imagine in a lot of other people's experiences, it's a lot easier to parse.
Absolutely. In the PHP world, parsing JSON is way, way better than way easier, I should say, than parsing XML for sure. URL versus URI. If somebody refers to a URI, is that the same thing as URL, or is there a difference?
So URI is considered more proper because it's a uniform resource identifier. So it's just an ID that goes along with it. So it's not necessarily a location. So it gets closer to like the CRUD concepts of this is an ID for the resource that you're interacting with, not necessarily the location of it. Because the location you usually throw in like the HTTP and the actual domain portion of it. Whereas when you talk URI, it's usually just everything after the slash. So it's v1 API blah 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 blah.
Cool. Just a unique identifier. Nice.
Yeah, it's just a unique identifier. They're pretty much interchangeable.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about what makes an API a RESTful API. I can't remember who mentioned REST earlier, but what does REST stand for? What's it mean? Why is it important when talking about API design?
I think one of the problems we have as we talk about APIs, and you asked how do APIs interact, is that there are several different types of APIs. You have your SOAP API, which was like, no, not SOAP. And everyone talks about REST, but the reality is most APIs are not RESTful. Most APIs do not use CRUD correctly. They do not use Hypermedia. They do not use very ambiguous endpoints. Most APIs tend to be like RPC. So I think when we talk about REST, it's understanding what REST is, and what REST actually entails in its theory. So I think, first of all, it's very, very important, not only on the consuming standpoint, understand how do we use it, but on the design standpoint of what are we doing. Because I saw REST API where you make a post using a query string to get data. That's not RESTful. That's not what CRUD stands for at all. That's not how you do it. So I think it's very
Thanks for the sound effect, Jeremy.
I love the sound effect. I think it's also important to understand like Helios, and since Andrew brought up, do you want to explain that, Andrew?
Uh-oh, we're jumping right into the big...
So you're asking me if I want to explain Hypermedia as the engine of application state? No.
Exactly. Okay.
I'll take it.
Well, think of your browser. When you make a request to a web page, you're getting HTML. That's dynamic. That's Hypermedia. And one of the key principles of REST is let's send Hypermedia back. So whether you're sending like links back so that your application can be dynamic, you're not just sending back static body of text. You allow the application to be fluid and react to the data that you send it. In a nutshell, I think that's a quick explanation of what Helios is and what
It's
Hypermedia
easier
is.
than that. It's even easier than that. Have you guys ever read a Choose Your Own Adventure book?
Yes.
Choose Your Own Adventure book. You don't read page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You read page 1 until you reach the first choice. And then if you have, it's something like if you go in the door on the right, you go to page 20, door on the left, go to page 40. And then so that is what it is. It's that Helios, the concept is that the options that are available to you at any given moment are relative to the permissions and the condition of the system at that moment. It's a choose your own adventure book. So if you go down one path, you've got a new set of options available to you. And luckily, unlike a choose your own adventure book, you don't die constantly. But that's how it works out.
So would you say the really layman's terms for this really long term, I'm going to say it all here, Hypermedia as an engine of application state, which is abbreviated as HATEOAS, HATOS, or HATOS, whatever. But we're going to say
terrible breakfast cereal.
Helios, we'll say hypermedia constraint. These words, they just sound so complicated. But would you say that the sort of the root or the essence of that is basically you get an API that returns links, right, that you can click on?
Yeah, that you can explore and you can go deeper into the API without necessarily having to reference the documentation. GitHub is a fantastic example of that. Sometimes make a request to the root of the GitHub API and see what returns back. It's a series of links to the additional resources, and then you can make a request to any of those resources. And if you have to authenticate, it returns a 401 must authenticate. It returns, if then you authenticate, it goes ahead and returns all the information all the way down the line. It's a fantastic API for that.
That's awesome.
Well, an important thing to keep in mind, too, is that REST is, if you choose REST as your architecture, I guess, REST is stateless. You know, it's not like, let's say, you're connecting to an IRC chat room and all the messages are going over the pipe, and you have, you have a stream going back and forth, and everything you do can affect the state of where things were. In REST APIs, you have to communicate, what the current state you're in and what the next states you can possibly be in are within the bounds of the request response framework. Silence.
Silence.
End rant.
End rant.
So we have, we talked about there's multiple types of APIs, right? So there's REST or RESTful, then there's the HATOS is kind of like the extreme of REST, or as REST people would say, the actual correct form of REST. And
Dr. Ray Feeling would say that.
And then there's RPC style APIs, but why choose one over the other?
Good question.
Actually, I have to jump on that one because I had a presentation where I talked about just that question. And I think it comes down to what you need. I asked one company, like, should you use SOAP or REST? They're like, REST. I was like, well, what if your clients are all using a SOAP API? Would it make more sense in that case to use SOAP because they're your clients and that's what they're looking for? So I think it comes down to what your clients need. I see somebody shaking their head, but
Matt Frost is shaking his head.
He's like, no, I hate you. But the other aspect is, what are you going to do? What are the technologies that you're using, and how long do you expect your API to last? REST was designed to give you longevity with your API. Helios was designed to give you longevity with your API, so that as you add more things and modify it, your API is not getting replaced every 2 to 3 months. So I think if you look at best practices, REST offers far more advantages over SOAP or even RPC, and that's decoupled. You're able to be in a stateless environment. You're able to send the data back and forth. You're able to take advantage of multiple content types, whether it be XML, JSON, plain text, HTML, whatever you really want. It really gives you a lot more flexibility than I think RPC or SOAP would.
I can't wait to hear what Matt has to say about that.
We haven't really defined what RPC is yet either.
True. Can you take that one real quick? Or anybody?
No, I was going to say, actually, somebody can define RPC, then I have something to say. So I think you're going to define RPC.
I don't know what the formal definition of RPC is, but I always just think of it as basically local methods or functions that map one-to-one with functions or types of behavior that exist in the API. So I don't know if anyone has a better way to describe it than that.
It's a remote procedure call. Essentially, if you look at REST versus RPC, REST would be your API/users, and then you use CRUD to determine what action you want to do. RPC tends to be your API/users/edit, and then you make a post call to it.
So it's more like REST is more resource-oriented, RPC is more function or feature-oriented.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So I was just gonna play. I'm gonna play devil's advocate because I'm all for REST APIs, 99 RESTful APIs. Thank you, somebody, for correcting me when I said REST last time. not 99 times out of 100. But let's say your APIs aren't always over over a network, over HTTP. Let's say you are designing an operating system and you need a windowing system where you manage windows and windowing positions and colors and buttons and click handlers and things like that. You probably don't want to be managing your click handlers with REST calls. REST is probably not the right way to handle real-time event-driven architectures like that, where everything's existing on the same system. So every REST or RPC, remote procedure calls, have their place. I think the bottom line boils down to, are you dealing with resources? And if you're dealing with resources, then I think REST is the only thing that really makes much sense.
And Matt, would you agree? Especially according to what Mike said earlier about sometimes you want to use SOAP depending on what your client uses. What is your response to that kind of thing on REST?
Yeah, my head shaking was more of a personal thing than it was. I agree with Mike. I think if you have to work with clients. You have to give them things that they know how to interact with, and if that happens to be SOAP, then I think sometimes you have to bite the bullet and just do that. But it's not my favorite thing to work with. Just from a either from a server standpoint or from a consuming standpoint, it's just kind of.
How much of that, though, is the fact that if anybody's had, for anybody in the audience who hasn't had to deal with SOAP before, had the pleasure, how much of that is because for every SOAP request you have like 90% of the message, that's an exaggeration, but a good portion of the message is all boilerplate and envelope and meta information that's not even related to the resource or the function procedure you're trying to call. It's all related to the protocol itself.
I think that kind of goes back to a question earlier about why people tend to favor JSON as the way to describe the days, because JSON, of all the options that people have used, really has the less amount of extraneous data when you're dealing with APIs.
Right. The responses tend to be lighter, tend to be a little bit snappier. Yeah, and if your consideration is performance, which I think for a lot of people it is, a JSON response is going to come back a lot quicker than a big XML. And in SOAP's case, with all the extraneous information that comes back in one of those responses.
Right. A SOAP request.
There's also the aspect that we're looking at mobile clients, and when you're talking about mobile, you need a payload that's small, lightweight, and not just for processing purposes, but for sending it down the wire. Because remember, these devices are not always connected, and even when they are connected, we have to get used to very slow connections. So the more data we try to push down the wire, the more painful that app is going to be to use. And
Definitely.
so JSON makes a lot more sense over XML for a lot of reasons there.
So why JSON and not message pack, for instance?
Is that a binary package?
Yeah, it's essentially, if you look at their website, it's like JSON but fast and small.
Well, you know what? If your clients going back to what Mike said, if that's what your clients use and that's what your clients can handle, then go for it. I think at this point, having clients that are supporting that's going to be a little challenging, but having that as an option, you can do that with the content negotiation. I think that'd be a really powerful concept. The REST, if you go back to look at Roy Fielding, the sort of father of REST and who put these concepts out originally, he doesn't define what the payload is. He says there is a payload, but he doesn't say it has to be XML or JSON or whatever. So I don't care what it is. You can have an API that returns images. That's a payload. Binary, whatever. As long as you're returning something, even a 0-byte response, you're all good.
The puns in Twitter are kind of becoming ridiculous. Of course, Jeremy McCullough is the instigator of this. He said he gave up on making a SOAP API. He said the whole project was a wash. Oh, knee slapper.
Wow.
And
I was gonna say you spent half your development time cleaning stuff up.
Igor responded, "Give me a rest." Oh. Actually, Lee Davis said, "Is no one going to mention the Richard maturity model? Does anybody know what that
Yes.
is?"
The Richardson maturity model is an awesome thing. It goes through the sort of 4 levels of the glory of REST is sort of the top level. And the first level is nouns. Once you stop thinking of things, I'm sorry, the first level is plain old XML, XML over HTTP. Like once you're pushing back XML back and forth, like you're on the first step of having like a pretty good API. I would switch that to say JSON now, but that would be the only tweak to that. The next level is nouns. Once you start thinking of your API as a series of resources that are interconnected, that have relationships that can be interacted with one at a time, like named resources, that's the next step. The third step is verbs. Using the HTTP verbs correctly. Get, put, post, delete. Throw head in there as another option. I think those are all good things. So you're using a put to do updates. Or to create something. You're using a delete to delete stuff. You're not a RPC, remote procedure call sort of thing where it's like delete user is the command. You're actually using the verb properly. The next level is the hypermedia controls, and hypermedia controls are using those links. That's the choose your own adventure book. That's how you can explore your API and do different things with it. And that's sort of what maps to the glory of REST is what it says in the maturity model.
Cool.
Does that make sense? Does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's enough for me to go Google it for sure.
Yeah, that about sums it up.
Let's just take a look at a couple of things that you might encounter when you're dealing with an API. Something like authentication, for example. What are some examples of ways to authenticate a user with an API? Some of maybe the best practices and maybe the not so great practices.
Well, there's everyone's favorite OAuth, which is let me see how I want to describe this. Kind of how it works.
You wrote a book on OAuth, so
I did. It's going to look really bad if I can't explain it, right?
This is all you.
Buy my book, though.
So just describe your entire book in 2 sentences.
Right. No, I'll put the copy of my book in the show notes. No,
I'll do it for you, buddy.
I don't think my publisher would be very appreciative of that. Yeah, so basically, right, OAuth gives you a way to kind of represent yourself to other services. I like to use examples kind of when I describe it, and everyone here is probably very familiar with Twitter.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's like Facebook.
Wait, is it like Chirper?
It's like Chirper, exactly like Chirper, except for you get like 60 more characters. What was I saying? Okay, yeah. So when you want to interact with another service, right, you need to be able to identify who you are to that service in order to get resources that are private, that are protected, that are kind of your resources, whether those be tweets or direct messages or people that follow you or whatever. You need to be able to communicate with the service and tell them who you are. So what OAuth does to help kind of bridge that gap is gives you kind of this model of access tokens, right, which uniquely identify each user, and you would authenticate with the service that you're hoping to connect to. You're identifying yourself to them, and in exchange for that authentication, you're getting back a token or a series of tokens, depending on whether you're using OAuth 1 or OAuth 2. And then with those, generally, and I hate to generalize this because every API seems to do this incredibly differently, which I can't understand, but generally speaking, what you would do is take that token and put it inside of an authorization header. Well, at least in OAuth 2, you would just pass the token along in the authorization header, and then that identifies you back to the service and can get you the records that are directly yours. And OAuth 1 is a little bit more complex. You have to create a signature that's a lot of fun to create. If you've never done it before, you should try it.
Would you say that OAuth is kind of a way of creating state in a stateless interface? And what I mean by that is RESTful or API, web APIs are often described as being stateless, in that you make a request, it returns a response, and then everything's done. Whereas if you have some sort of identifier that you can send to it every single time saying, hey, it's me, it can be like, oh yeah, I remember you from last time, and send something back that's maybe pertains to the last request. Does anybody agree or disagree with that statement?
I think you could do that, but I think generally speaking, that's not a great idea. I think you should be able to make any request, over and over again, and get the same response or the same type of response.
Idempotency.
Idempotency is the word. Yes.
Idempotency.
Yeah. One of the core concepts, I'm drawing a blank on what level of Helios this is, but is that it's cacheable, and returning a different response based on the value of sessions breaks that.
Yeah, I look at it kind of the same way as I look at content negotiation, in a sense that I am, as part of my request, I'm sending information to the server to tell them how to fulfill the request, and if that's, whether that's I want JSON back, or I'm sending JSON or whatever, you're basically just sending more information that gives the server enough information to successfully fulfill your request.
Has anybody ever used basic auth to authenticate with an API?
Yes.
This decade?
So basic auth is basically authenticating with your headers, right, that you send, right? Would that be a good, really brief description?
That's fair.
So you mentioned this decade. Is that kind of old school? Nobody does that anymore, or what?
The problem with basic auth is it transmits your password in plain text. And even if you're really bad, if you decide to not include your name and password in the headers, you can actually include your name and password in the URL in a basic auth site, which then has the nasty side effect of also including in all your logs and every waypoint along the way if you're not over HTTPS.
Hey, that would make it really easy to share your resources with other people, though.
Until your password changes. Then it would be nice if you had some sort of token or something, that you could reuse regardless of if your password changed.
If you're behind an SSL, then you're technically not sending it over in plain text, right?
You're not, no.
But
at
if
some
you're
point,
sending the log files, it'll show up.
At some point, it becomes decrypted.
I think the other danger too is with like OAuth 2, for example, you get that token. That token may have certain access rights, so they're able to do certain things with your API, but they can't actually go in and change billing preferences or grab the credit card information. Whereas if you're using the username and password, if their application gets hacked, they know have free reign to their account where they can do anything they want with it. And there's no way to say, hey, this is a bad account, let's shut it off, because it's their credentials. Everybody
remember when Twitter allowed basic auth authentication? So this amazing thing happened where you had millions of people giving their username and password to completely untrusted third parties, which to me is amazing. And I did it because there was no other choice until OAuth became the norm, because they forced people to not use basic auth anymore.
Well, so OAuth seems to be the standard. Is there another way to authenticate? Maybe then there's like a new hipster thing that people are doing, or is it still pretty solid OAuth?
Well, I think we've kind of skipped a whole classification of other authentication schemes. That being of API, the double key system. I know like AWS uses something like that. Twilio, I believe, is similar in that way, where you are sending basically data hashed with your secret key, but including your access key as an identifier.
So you talked about a secret hash, which is like signing your request, basically, right? So you take what you're sending to the server and you sort of encrypt it with this little key that only you and the server know, and you send it across, and that server can decrypt it with that secret key, and if it's able to decrypt it correctly, then it knows that it's a legit thing. Is that what you were referring to?
Right. You usually have two keys: one that identifies you, and one that you sign with.
Right, and I guess everybody has a little different name for that. In Facebook world, it's called the app secret proof, and it uses your app secret to kind of take that payload and encrypt it, and it's signing your request.
Facebook's system is very similar, yep.
That's a really great way to lock down the API, because if somehow you're storing all these access tokens that you're getting by authenticating a user that live, sometimes access tokens can last for 2 years or something, and if somebody breaks into that database and suddenly they can make requests on your behalf, unless you are having to sign all of your requests to the server.
Well, then there's the extreme of that, right? Is I think there's an AWS person or something here today, but the extreme of that AWS.
Look at the time.
Let's just create a IAM. You can essentially create a dedicated token for every single resource if you wanted to that you want to have accessed, and then you only give that token as a very limited scope to the client. Which is, I like that model. It can be a little difficult to manage sometimes, but
yeah, the IAM system is very similar to the Facebook app key, where it's different key per application, or different key per user, different key per role. You assign permissions to a particular key, and then you distribute that. You only use that with your app. So if it's somehow compromised, you can it has less privileges than your real credentials, and 2, you can revoke it and turn it off right away.
Yeah, that process and concept isn't horribly different from kind of what I'm thinking of OAuth 1 in particular. You'd pass along a lot of your secret key and your actual token and sign your request with that. So I mean, yeah, that kind of key pair thing is pretty common. When you get into 2, you kind of lose the user secret, right, the client secret, but you still have an application secret or an API. I forget what they call it. Twitter calls them weird things. They're not like uniform. But yeah, you like in OAuth 2, you would use that application secret, which is basically identifying your application as you defined it in that service back to the service, and that allows you to kind of set, like in OAuth 1 there wasn't this real detailed kind of access control idea built in, and when I say built in, I just mean into the spec, not into any of the libraries that use it or anything. But if you look at Twitter, when you go in there and you sign up and you create an API, right, you've got like read only and you've got read and write, right, and so the API needs to know how to respond based on the settings that you set up. With OAuth 2, kind of what you guys just described is you have this idea of scopes, right, which kind of defines what that key can do in the context of the API, and maybe you really only need to read information and write to a couple of different areas. So rather than opening the whole app up to read-write, you've got, okay, well, you can read everything, but you can only write to users or the GitHub. I agree with Keith. The GitHub API is really nice to work with, and they do a really good job of kind of defining scopes. So.
And I wonder if they used something like Rammel to design their API. This is something I just actually recently discovered. This idea that there's like this RESTful API modeling language, or Rammel, that you can use to sort of kind of, I guess, wireframe your API almost. Does anybody have any experience with this?
That's a nice segue on that, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll jump on this at first. So like you said, Ramble stands for RESTful API Modeling Language. And if you've used Swagger or API Blueprint, it's very similar from a documentation standpoint, with the exception that Ramble really wanted to encourage design first. So you can use it no matter where you're at in your API, whether you're trying to do documentation or whatever. But it's really to say, how do I want my API to look, and actually design it visually, be able to prototype it so developers can try out the different endpoints, get immediate feedback from them, so that you're not starting to write code, put it out in the real world, and then find out it's not what developers need. So I think that's one of the big things with that is saying, hey, we want you to focus on design, think about your API before you build it, make sure it's what your developers want to use before you build it, and then also let's encourage best practices. In code we use things like code reuse and design patterns. We don't do that when we're putting together APIs. One of the aspects that Ramble says is, hey, we want you to use resource types or define your resources, and then reuse that again and again. And then same with traits. You reuse your code again and again. So that's Ramble in a nutshell.
Awesome. So it's a service that you upload basically a configuration file, and you're able to kind of talk to it as if you had already created the API?
So Ramble is more of a spec. So you actually write Ramble, and then there are different tools out there. For example, there's the API designer, so that you can actually write your Ramble and see in real time what the API looks like. As you put in your endpoint, you'll see the endpoint on the right of the screen. As you put in a get action verb, you'll see get. As you put in an example response, you'll see that example response. There's this awesome company, which I don't want to do any advertising on your podcast. But
Go ahead.
MuleSoft, of course, offers a free mocking service where taking that Ramble file, you click mock it, you can actually pass a link to other developers, and they can make co requests against that link to get back the request. So they can actually do a mock post request or a mock get or a mock patch or mock put or mock delete, see what they get, and give you immediate feedback on that API and how it interacts with them. There's the API console, which allows you to have interactive documentation for developers to interact with, and the API notebook, which lets you actually create calls to the API in real time, interact with other services, and then save code uses and examples. So I'm a huge Ramble fan. I could talk all day. I'm actually going to turn over to Mr. Curioso, though, if that's okay with him, because I think when we met at Northeast PHP, he was telling me how great these different tools were, and coming to my talk to mock me, and I think you did a pretty good job.
I think you mocked me more from the podium than I mocked you from the seat, I think.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. The audience didn't know what you were talking about. I'll tell you that. I've actually been, just back up. I've been using Rammel since Mike introduced it to me. I was using Swagger, which is another API modeling language before that, and I love it because it's a lot more, a lot less, garbage. You can kind of get to the point and define your API in a nice hierarchical way that makes sense. And I just want to reiterate what Mike said, because what Mike said was great, in that, it is, I'm going to put on my engineering management hat for a second. It is so much more expensive, if not downright impossible, to change an API after it's already developed. And that's why I don't want to hate, because somebody from Swagger might be listening. But the Swagger is really geared more towards documenting an API you've already created, whereas Rammel seems to be designed more from the ground up to be able to spec out and prototype an API. I think specking out and prototyping your API before you even write one line of code is so important, because changing code is expensive. Changing a spec, not so much.
Right, and actually that's kind of an interesting thing about versioning an API to begin with, because actually Lee Davis was on Twitter was saying, should I simver my REST API, or semantic versioning, which is a way of versioning your code? Should I simver my REST API, or do different rules apply? How do you implement versioning? And that was actually on the show notes, and I know we're kind of running out of time a little bit, so I was actually going towards the end of the show notes, but does anybody want to touch on how you might version an API quickly, like some of the techniques that people have used to version an API, and what the best practices are?
Actually, can I jump back a second? I've got a
totally.
response to what Mike said. So I do happen to use Swagger. Nothing against Swagger, nothing against Rammel. I think, Mike, you missed something that Andrew, you started to hit on. Is I think Rammel is fantastic for prototyping and for building that initial version out there and get some feedback, but that's not design. That's not design at all. That's implementation. That's prototyping. I think design should start a couple steps before that, and design should start in terms of what business problem are you actually solving. If you're not solving a business problem with your API, you're doing it wrong. CRUD is a starting point. CRUD is acceptable for many APIs. A lot of what we do is fundamentally CRUD, but at the same time, an API should be so much more than that. And I think Rammel comes in the step after that. I think design, I actually, like when we did our API design at Clarify, we used note cards for the whole thing to lay out individual activities and steps of those activities, and then start grouping the note cards to build what the individual API interfaces would look like.
That
And I
sounds a lot
think
like UI design. A lot of times when you're creating,
absolutely,
yeah, it's like the
absolutely.
architecture of your API. Jeremy was wanting to
Hey,
say something.
Keith, I think your next talk should be called "Transcending Your API." That kind of fit in.
Well, so as part of the book, my writing partner and I, we do a 16-hour training course on designing APIs where we talk about this. We go into massive detail about this because I think it's so fundamental and we miss it so much because as software developers, we want to write code. We want to get to the configuration. We want to get to things and start seeing bits move back and forth. But at the end of the day, if we're not solving real business problems, we're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I can agree with Keith more on that. And just to iterate on the design thing, I definitely agree. If you don't know what the purpose of your API is before you start designing it or before you start building it, you're going down the wrong track. That's a very vital first step. And I think just on kind of like the note card thing, I think you need to have an idea of what your endpoints are going to be, how they're going to interact, what your users are going to do. I think what Rammel allows you to do in the design phase is lay out those endpoints, determine what the schema is going to be, how it looks. But you're absolutely right. You need to have that design first mentality.
Yeah, and Rammel's a great tool. I just think it's step 2.
Cool. So I think that's a a good sort of advice, I guess, for all developers who want to just jump right into coding on an idea they have. Whereas you need to step back about 10 paces and start thinking more about like the problem itself and researching with maybe the lean startup strategy and trying to, well, that's a different podcast altogether. But really quickly, I wanted to see about versioning and what you guys thought about, like, if you do screw up that design process, or no, I should say if the spec changes, which spec never changes on us. So if the spec changes and later on we need to make a revision and we want to make sure that the people who are using our API don't just get a broken link when we change something, how do we version our APIs? What's the best practice behind that?
The answer is it doesn't matter. Everyone will hate you if you change the version.
Pretty much. If you go with the Helios sort of like that sort of goal, then the proper place to put the versioning is in the content, the media type information. When you're doing that initial content negotiation, where you don't just say I'm expecting HTML or text JSON or application JSON, you say I'm expecting GitHub v3 application JSON. So then the server can say, oh, I know how to speak v3. Here's the data that you want. So then you can also specify v1, v2. Yeah, then that's all in the headers. That's the sort of the grand high ideal. More realistically, and my criticism with that is that not a lot of people know how to work with headers properly, so they make that mistake a lot, and they don't know how to negotiate that very well. So I think the default fallback position is putting it in the URIs, and I think that's the safest because everyone knows how to interact with that. Everyone knows what to do with that. You're not going to blindside people with that. But I mean, Jeremy's totally right. They're going to get annoyed at you no matter what you do. Just be consistent. God, please be consistent.
Right. Actually, Jeremy Mikola actually asked a question about thoughts on implementing APIs using maybe micro frameworks. He mentions one called I don't even know how to say this. API.
Appagility.
Appagility, there it is, or Boss REST bundle. And I think that kind of ties into where I kind of want to sort of end this thing on questioning how much domain logic of our apps is being moved to the client side, to where where PHP is basically becoming this sort of permanent state storage, just an API kind of app that we're developing, and most of our sort of fancy one-page appness is happening actually on the client side with new JavaScript frameworks that are like Ember or what's Angular, React.js, which is amazing. I've been playing with that. So what are your all thoughts on, have you experienced this idea of trying to develop these one-page apps and finding that most of your domain logic is actually happening in JavaScript and you're just using PHP to store permanent state?
So I can bite on that, I guess. I think I've heard a few other people here mention this in talks at one point or another too. Is the API is not your if you're dealing with REST at least, it's not really your business logic layer. It's your way of dealing with resources, storing them, saving them, the CRUD searching and whatnot. And if you I can say, I can kind of make a blanket statement that if you design your API to be separate from your front end and your business logic from the ground up, you're not going to regret it. Somebody's going to email me 5 months later saying, "Hey, I designed the API first, and now I regret it, you bastard." Pardon me. But the thing is, front ends change. Designers get different ideas of how things should work, and you do some A/B testing, and you realize, hey, this way we did it was completely stupid. We should kind of really redo that. And if all your business logic is tied in with your API, and your API is tied in with your business logic, and you have chocolate in your peanut butter, and it's all messy like that, it's it's really, really tough to be agile and really tough to change. So I've done a few apps that are all Angular.js front end. I'm a big fan of Angular. And RESTful backends, and I love them. And I've actually done a few apps that PHP only people, please don't kill me, that have some other language implementing the API, and then PHP on the front end on the server side interfacing with the API, which PHP is awesome at. I think it's one of the best languages at doing that, and JavaScript on the front end. So they got that sandwich. You kind of have a 4-tier system. You have your back end, your data storage. You have your REST API, or your SOAP API, or RPC API, or whatever you want. You have your server-side front end, and then you have your client-side front end. And doing it that way, you have so much flexibility. What if you want to build an iPhone app?
Right. And when you're actually specifically designing your web app, are you finding that most of your domain logic is happening in the JavaScript, or is it still kind of a lot of your HTML and stuff is being generated by PHP using template engines like Blade and Twig and all that kind of stuff? Or is nobody's designing one-page apps? Or
the first question you need to ask yourself is who your audience is.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think designing a website that's rendered entirely in JavaScript, if you're a blog, is probably not the best design decision in the world. There's no need to require JavaScript and sessions and things like that if you're trying to distribute content. But if you're building Google apps or Gmail, or sorry to keep using Google products, if I'm trying to think of a non-Google example, I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry.
Facebook uses a lot of JavaScript.
I'd say anything that sits behind the firewall. If you want search engine optimization, though, one-page apps, or like things that load individual components as you scroll and interact through the page, that makes it more challenging. So
right.
Blogs, I think, are a great thing. But anything that sits behind the firewall that doesn't need search engine optimization, I think, is a candidate for JavaScript.
Absolutely, and I feel like, Andrew, you said it earlier, it just depends. That's really the answer for everything, I think. But you got to know your audience, and your client, and if those requirements allow you to use JavaScript and put all that domain logic in your JavaScript, then yeah.
Most of it depends on what's right for your customer and what's right for you. Except modifying data with a GET request in a REST API. That's not up for debate. Don't do that. Yeah.
Gosh, we're already kind of running kind of late on this thing, and there's so much more I had on the show notes, so I just want to make sure to get to a couple more salient points before we close this thing out.
If we run out of time, we could just start shouting out buzzwords.
We could, and then just be like, Google this, Google that. One I really wanted to touch on was API debugging and how you debug your API. Basically, I want to see what headers are being shown in the back, behind the scenes. How do I look at my headers when I'm designing an API, or how do I look at a header that I'm trying to interface with, with real-time updates on Facebook? They have this service that will post to a certain endpoint that you provide, and there'll be a payload and headers and all that stuff that you have to mess with. Is there a place that I could point that to and just kind of see what they're giving me so I can know how to write my script?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. On to the next point.
I would say RunScope is kind of the gold standard there, and I'm biased. The founders of RunScope are all guys I used to work with, and it sits as a proxy between you and the API and logs everything that you do with the API. both your request and your headers that go out and the request and headers that come back. Some of the stuff we do for Clarify is asynchronous, and so you can even set it up so that the callbacks from the asynchronous calls, the webhooks, get fired to RunScope, and they capture everything that you just put out. So I'm a huge fan. It's a fantastic service, and I recommend it all over the time.
Clarify, right?
Yeah.
And that's the shirt you're wearing right now. Clarify.
Yes, it is.
How does that differ from something I'm familiar with? RunScope. Is it similar to that? They're a service that lets you to hit endpoints and gives you.
No, we use RunScope, but Clarify is my company. We are an API company that makes audio and video searchable. So stuff like podcasts, phone calls, stuff along those lines.
Oh, nice. Excellent. Does anybody else have any experience debugging their APIs with a service or just doing it?
So I'm going to be the crazy one again. So I think there's not much of a substitute for learning curl. Command line curl. People are going to think I'm crazy for saying that, but I also use Vim as my primary program editor, so have to be a little crazy. Good. No Emacs people who want to, or at least no one looks like they want to kill me right now. And
you're good.
curl is amazing for. Curl is a command line URL library for anybody listening who hasn't used it. If you have a Mac or a Linux computer, it's probably already installed, and you can access it via the terminal. But I have yet to meet a API that I haven't been able to integrate with completely through curl. OAuth 2 starts to get really tricky, but it's still doable. So if you want to, for example, get the JSON output of a basic GET request, you can just type curl and then the GET URL in there and -d space dash to dump the headers to standard output, and it will give you the full headers, the full body, and everything right in your command line. So if anybody's brave, I recommend it.
That's actually cool. If you're on the command line, that's a great way to do it. I also use this app called HTTP Client, and that's on the Mac. And it's a neat little way of just kind of sending raw headers and getting raw responses back. And I know there's a lot of plugins for Chrome and Firefox that allow you to sort of debug what sending post requests and things like that. So there's a lot of resources and tools out there that help you to kind of debug what's going on in your APIs.
There's also one called I don't know how to say it. I always call it HTTPIE. HTTPIE.
HTTPIE. Cool.
Yeah.
It works on your IE browser, huh?
No, it's a command line tool.
Just kidding.
That kind of it's not dissimilar to what Andrew was describing with curl, but it kind of isn't curl. It kind of encapsulates all the it encapsulates all the curl commands, so you can run. Like I said, I call it HTTPie. I'm sorry, guys, if that's not the right pronunciation. HTTPie. I don't know. But yeah, you can type in HTTPie get, and then a very similar kind of process to using curl. Just you don't have to know. You don't have to know all the curl flags. You just have to know all the specific.
Right.
I like the subtle implication on their GitHub page that people like me aren't human. I'm not sure to take that as a compliment or not.
Andrew, what are your thoughts on curling as an Olympic sport? Yeah. That pun was provided by Jeremy McCullough. He's been providing puns nonstop. Thanks for all the content, Jeremy.
Whoever said that, where I'm from, is the official training site of the Olympic curlers. Going out there.
Nice.
So one tool that I use a lot is the Guzzle library.
What Guzzle? What is that?
Guzzle's a pretty cool HTTP client library, generic PHP client for that. And as far as debugging goes, a lot of the time when I'm writing code with Guzzle to work with an API, Guzzle has request and response objects that encapsulate that data, and you can just echo them, and the toString function prints out the entire request, so you can see all the headers and the body. And there's also some other things that you can hook up to the client through the event system that'll print those out for you as well. So a lot of tools have their own debugging mechanisms. There's other like tool proxies like Charles proxy. Keith mentions something that he used for incoming HTTP requests. I've used ngrok before, which is really cool for handling inbound requests. Those are the only ones I can think of at the moment.
I'm glad you mentioned Guzzle because that was something I wanted to actually ask about, but I keep trying to like wrap it up, but it's like there's so much to talk about. But Guzzle, you can create very easily a interface basically for an API that you're trying to interface with that doesn't have an SDK, for example, right? Like there's a way that you can sort of define, oh, this endpoint is going to return this kind of thing, and then make it really easy to implement in PHP. Is that how it works?
Yeah, so there's two parts to Guzzle. There's the HTTP client part, and then there's the web service client framework part. And they're actually in different packages, so you can only get the parts that you want. But yeah, Guzzle allows you to use a simple description that's very similar to Swagger, where you can define what the API returns, and then it knows how to understand how to work with that API.
And out of the box, Guzzle uses curl, right, with a stream wrapper fallback. Is that right?
Yeah, the most recent version does not require curl, but yeah, it uses curl by default because curl's got all the cool toys like being able to do curl multi-handles and parallel requests and stuff like that, and that's baked into Guzzle. And
if you're not familiar with stream wrappers, it's a sweet way that with PHP where you can do a function call on say file get contents, and you can put a URL in there, and it'll actually make that request for you. And that's sort of what you use in a stream wrapper to make requests instead of using curls, because a lot of people I think end up developing on servers that don't come with curl functionality with PHP. So that's very helpful to just install Guzzle and just don't even have to think about it. So that's my hat's off to actually Jeremy. You contribute to that, and it was written by originally by Michael Dowling, right?
Michael Dowling. So yeah, I contribute to it, but I would have to say my contributions consist of about 0.1%. They're smaller, so it's mostly Michael Dowling's project. Is MT Dowling on Twitter.
Cool. And then I'm going to try to really wrap it up this time for reals, because we're moving into this last segment that I really try to add to each one. It's something old, something new, something borrowed, and something deprecated. So as far as APIs go, and this could be about packages or just API design, whatever. What is something old that's been around for a while but is still awesome?
Huh.
We're also bleeding edge here.
How about,
There's nothing old that's still good. Huh?
HTTP?
Okay, nice.
There you go.
Ooh, good call.
Well done, well done.
Cool. Still good. It's still on version 1, I hear.
1.1, I think. 1991, I think, was when the spec was finalized.
That sounds right.
I liked HTTP before it was cool.
I like
PHP, 1995.
Chris Harchis, who's the grumpy programmer, just challenged everyone on PHP Roundtable to donate $25 to MT Dowling because Guzzle is awesome, and I tend to agree. Like that, it's just saved me tons of time. Just want to give out shout out. Thanks, Chris.
I'm in
As
for
long as
that.
we don't have to dump cold ice water on our head.
You have to do that too. That's the other half of it.
It's the Guzzle challenge.
The Guzzle challenge.
Right? That just sounds weird.
Sounds like a drinking game. It's something that's new in the API world, or something that's coming soon. So is there like a sort of a spec for something that's coming out in the API land that's best practice?
Hey, Mr. Stowe, I think that's a softball for you.
Is that?
Yeah.
Let's go with Rammel. I like that one.
Well, you could say the new HTTP RFCs. Those came out in June.
What is it?
They're new RFCs for HTTP. So it hasn't changed. Like, it's not a new version, but they released new RFCs that clarify things. I think. What was the original one? 269. I can't remember. Anyway, these are all. These are all in the 7,000 range. So if you're not looking at one that's 7,000 something, that's not the new one.
So you're talking about HTTP status codes, right, that are being returned?
I mean the entire spec.
The entire spec, because I saw something that was saying that gave new HTTP status codes that were something like, code 800 meant that you're using IE and you suck. Did anybody see those?
I think that was Phil Sturgeon's contributions. So I'd hold them suspect.
Finally, let's have anybody have anything deprecated, know of anything deprecated in the API
I wanted
world?
to go really quickly, really out left field for that last question. Sorry. Do you mind? Do we have one more second?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Real time. That is something new that we haven't talked about yet, and has nothing to do with REST or SOAP. So I'll just plant the idea of real-time APIs and streaming APIs and WebSockets and all that good stuff.
Cool. Nice.
See also big data.
Big data, aka in the cloud, aka use AWS for everything.
I didn't say that.
I said it for you.
You didn't have to.
PR people about that one. So what's deprecated in API land that is that's we're not going to see anymore as far as dealing with APIs?
I have something that I hope I never see again, but I will. I don't know if that counts.
XML? What?
No. OAuth 1. I wouldn't mind seeing that being deprecated in favor of OAuth 2.
Yeah, that's a good call.
But, like I said, it won't be. Twitter will continue to use it, and...
Well, one step back from that, you have basic and digest auth.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to be seeing those in too many brand new APIs.
You'd be surprised.
Nice. Well, we've had a lot of activity on Twitter. I'd like to thank everybody who's been giving feedback. My dance partner is actually watching, and she said, "Talk nerdy to me." So she's trying to learn the ins and outs of programming and what APIs are and everything like that. And actually, if you're in Chicago and you want to do more on APIs, we want to learn more about it, and I think there's a hackathon involved in everything. This September 24th, 25th, and 26th, this week, basically, there's an API strategy conference that I actually don't know a lot about, but who was I talking to? Mike, you said something about it? You're going to be there and speak, right?
Yeah, both myself and Keith Casey will be there.
Nice. And what is it exactly?
So it's a conference dedicated to API design and practice, trying to figure out a strategy around it. I think Keith and I are talking about API design and best practices that go with it. But there's a lot of different tracks, so if you're interested in learning about APIs, it's a pretty good conference.
How much is it? What does it cost to go?
A lot.
Any conference that's not a PHP conference costs a lot.
I didn't know that. Well, if you got a lot of money and you're in Chicago, definitely hit up this conference.
Yeah, it's I'm looking at it right now. It's about $600, and I suggest everyone go to Mike's talk. It'll be awesome.
Is it going to be streamed live, or can I?
So I appreciate that my talk will not be nearly as awesome as Keith's. Just throwing it out there.
All right, this is getting weird.
Oh, actually, Ben Ramsey.
I'm not sure if these are compliments or backhanded insults now.
Yeah,
No,
I'm like switching
I will,
the subject because
I
attention.
guarantee you I will be at Mike's talk. It'll be awesome.
Seriously, go to Keith's talk. Seriously.
Yes. So we may be talking.
Should we clarify?
I'm kind of on the fence.
Well, this was. I feel like this was a very well-timed API to advertise that for them. But Ben Ramsey joined us here at the end because I actually invited him on right like last second. He was like, "I want to talk APIs too," so we'll definitely get you on, Ben, in a future episode. And Steve Rhodes just got in here at the end, so it's like all the people are joining us live right here at the end. But that's okay; it's being recorded, so you can go back and watch it. There was so much more I wanted to go over. I had the show notes all written up, and just like Jeremy said in the last episode, I have a lot of show notes, and I got to figure out a way to maybe not do such a broad subject so that we can kind of really hone in on one specific subject for a while and kind of just chew on it for a bit. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure this thing out, see where it goes. But next episode, we're going to be talking about using a framework versus just installing random packages, and having a couple people on to kind of talk about how they approach this sort of idea, because some people are very framework anti-framework, and so we'll see what their ideas are. If you have something you'd like to share about frameworks or packages, then you definitely need to be on this panel. So hit me up on Twitter. My handle is Sammy K. I'd like to thank you, Matt, Jeremy, Mike, Keith, and Andrew for joining us for the discussion. I'm going to give you a quick opportunity each to do a shameless plug. Something that you want to, something that it could be a personal plug or just a general shout out, whatever. Let's go one at a time. Matt, you got anything you want to shamelessly plug before we close this thing out?
Absolutely. I have a book coming out sometime relatively soon here. It's an OAuth book covering both OAuth 1, OAuth 2 client and server, as well as some security stuff and some actual working examples. So
nice.
If you find yourself interested in that or wanting to learn more about how to kind of understand how OAuth works underneath all the abstractions of the libraries you might use, it'll be a good read for you.
Nice. I am interested. I might buy that book right now. Well, after we're done. Jeremy, you got anything you want to plug, man?
I have nothing to plug that makes me any money. But I will just say, if you haven't checked out the Guzzle library, check that out. If you are interested in AWS, talk to me anytime you want to talk. And I also work on the AWS SDK for PHP library. So if you're ever finding yourself using that, you feel free to talk to me about that as well.
That is a beautiful library, and I've been working on the Facebook SDK, and I'm looking to you guys for inspiration and how to do things correctly. I love that SDK. And I should mention, by the way, I'm going to be posting the link to join this Hangout after we close things out. So if you're watching, you just want to pop in and ask questions or whatever, it'll be still be aired live, but it won't be on the official podcast when we post it on iTunes. So, Mike, you got anything you want to shamelessly plug?
I have tons of things. No, if you're looking at developing an API, work with the API, checking out Rammel. If you go to MuleSoft.com, it's an awesome company, but they provide an API designer, API console, API notebook, a whole bunch of different tools that you can use to really design your API and then share your API with other developers, and they're all absolutely free of charge. So I'd encourage you to check those out. Again, it's MuleSoft.com. I feel like I should do like one of those commercials like, oh wait, there's more. If you follow Mule Dev, we will send you one of these squishy thingies if you let me know.
That looks like a squishy mule.
Yeah, it's a squishy mule.
Oh, I want it already.
All right, that's all I
got. Keith, you got anything you want to shamelessly promote?
Yeah, I'd like to throw out the reason why Mike and I were so lovey-dovey is that we're giving a presentation together. So we will definitely be at each other's presentation.
Aha, okay.
Yeah, that makes a little more sense to people now. They're not as creeped out. I did want to do a plug for my book. I tell people that I co-wrote the book on API design because our URL is literally theapidesignbook.com. So pretty proud about that. We've published the first 6 chapters. It's a work in progress, so we've got a couple more coming. Probably 2 or 4 more coming. I'm not entirely sure there. I co-wrote it with a local Austin guy, James Higginbotham, who is a Ruby and Java guy, so it's totally language agnostic. So if you're interested in APIs in general, that's a great thing to check out. And that's all I've got.
Nice. And lastly, Andrew, sorry, you're at the end here, but would you like anything to shamelessly promote?
That's a great question. I'd like to promote MuleSoft, Rammel. I left my stuffed mule at home. But no, it's a little old now. It's 4 years old now, but I'd like to give a shout out to Expert PHP and MySQL by Rox Wiley. 2010 book, but it goes over a lot of PHP stuff, particularly to do with interesting things like writing PHP extensions, but also there's some stuff on REST in there, and there's also some stuff on security and authentication, no OAuth stuff. I hear there's other books for that. If you happen to be a e-commerce site, if there's any e-commerce people out there, I hear that Zifter Coin, ziftrcoin.com, is launching a API soon that would have something to do with e-commerce that e-commerce people might be interested in. And third, sorry, I have 3 plugs. I apologize. NewHampshirePHP.org, the largest New Hampshire PHP, the largest PHP group north of Boston and south of Canada. So,
nice. Well, that's something to brag about there. We might have to come at you with some questions for the Chicago PHP group, see what you're doing right.
Yeah, 150 members. We meet the 4th Thursday of every month, so pretty
awesome.
Fairly consistent.
Well, this has been a really great talk, guys. I really think that there's some of these aspects we can tear out, like versioning, and we haven't even got to caching and like modifiers and all this stuff that I really wanted to talk about. But maybe we'll talk about those in a more dedicated episode a little bit later. But man, Matt, Jeremy, Mike, Keith, Andrew, thanks so much for joining the discussion, and we will see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks. It was fun.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if you guys want to hold on, we're going to be tweeting the link at PHP Roundtable. If you're watching, you can hop in and ask some questions. You guys don't have to stick around, but just feel free to stick around as much time as you have. You've already been so awesome. Just tweeted it just now. So I think I just tweeted it. I hope I did.
Tell Grumpy I accepted his challenge. It's done.
Oh, nice. Grumpy is making Michael richer. All right, so hopefully people can join us on the Hangout link. I have to pee really badly, so I'm going to go do that real quick. So the topic of the question while I'm gone is Rhode Island is neither a road or an island. Hey, Chuck, welcome. Welcome back from WordScon. I hope you're feeling better. I don't hear him yet, but I'm going to go pee, Chuck. I'll be right back.
Hi, guys.
Around, but just feel free to.
Oh, no, there's Jeremy.
Señor Nicola.
Hi.
Brother.
So who's going to hot dogs?
I am totally free Wednesday, so if they're still open, I'll be there.
Define totally free. That's like during the entire day, right?
That's the entire day.
Great. You should get there in the morning, and then you can get a hot dog by 10:30, I think.
Not bad.
Joe Claremont is in town, and it looks like he missed his chance, or he gave up, I think. I don't know if he's staying for the PHP meetup though.
How long was the line?
We were in line for 8 hours.
Oh, you're kidding me.
We're not kidding. Where's Matt Frost? Is he still here? No, he's empty right now. Yeah, we were in line for 8 hours. Chuck's here.
That's ridiculous.
8 hours.
Yeah, it was rough.
I think the longest time I've ever waited in line for anything was like 2.5 hours at Six Flags.
For one, yeah, but that was only for, what, 45 seconds?
Yeah, pretty much.
Proportionally, this is correct. We were eating for about 13 minutes. I think it works out.
Any baseball fans in here?
Oh, wait. I'm wrong. I waited in line for one of the Lord of the Rings midnight showings. That was, yeah.
I was going to say, I waited 6 hours in line for Yankees Red Sox tickets on game day at Fenway Park.
Wow.
Wow.
Got in.
I just waited 8 hours for a hot dog.
Amen. The most glorious 8 hours.
Just a hot dog. It doesn't sound nearly as good.
Oh, no.
Yeah, forget it. I've got Wednesday open, too. I'm going to go do something else and somewhat important or something. I don't know. I got nothing.
So for the outsider here, what's so special about these hot dogs?
Jeremy, take it away. Oh, no, Chuck.
Sorry,
Chuck?
I'm busy. I'm updating the pun count right now. 1 second.
Okay, I'll explain the hot dogs.
Got it.
I got this for you, Jeremy. So I'd actually been there a couple times, and that's the only reason when I found out it was going to be a 7 to 8 hour wait that I decided not to just turn around and go home. I like to explain it like this: like once you have one of these hot dogs, you come to this weird paradox in your own mind where you realize that you've never had a proper encased meat before in your life. They're just incredibly rich and delicious and satisfying, and I mean you never had some of these ingredients on a tubular meat in your life.
Let's be fair, it's not really a hot dog. They're really gourmet sausages. Some of them.
So they make their own sausages, right? So they get all the exotic meats. I think I actually had an alligator sausage,
So it's more of a sausage.
Wait.
Sausage fest.
Really, an alligator?
I had rattlesnake.
Yeah, they had a rattlesnake one. But they make all their own sausage, and they encase it all. They do have hot dogs that are just Vienna beef red hots. And some of the accoutrements that go along with these sausages and dogs are just things you would never imagine, but they work incredibly well together. So
Sounds like waiting in 8 hours for line for that is a terrible idea, because then you ruin hot dogs for the rest of your life.
You do. You really do. I've been there a couple times, and the highest praise that I've heard from someone else about it was my sister's husband said there's only one place that he would actually stand in line longer, and that's Franklin's in Austin.
Tell me more about this.
Yeah, you kept recording, right? So we can start the Encased Meats podcast.
Wait, before we go on, is there anybody else that we need to catch up?
The what?
Come on, Mike.
Oh, come on now.
I just tweeted the puns, and you're gonna do this to me?
I'm going to do this to you.
Knock it off.
Come on, guys.
We're up to 7 puns. Thanks.
I can't keep up. We are officially at 8 for this evening.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna relish this moment.
Here they come.
all these puns are gonna make me keel over.
Whoever says something I didn't hear on Saturday gets a prize.
Yes.
I don't think I can top 8 hours of you punning hot dogs.
Yeah, Jeremy, we punned pretty hard.
Whoa.
We punned pretty hard on Saturday.
We were a couple of pundits.
That's a pun. That's a pun on puns.
So I'm looking at Keith's background. Oh, okay, that is a Rickroll.
Yeah. What is your background? You mentioned you were sad. No one mentioned it. It's like backwards something.
I thought Keith was reversing his video earlier, but then I saw his shirt, so he just wrote "Never gonna give you up" backwards.
Oh, that's what the Rickroll reference was.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I think we got several mics in here now.
Hey, there's Old Man Ramsey.
Is PW Nerd Supreme the same guy that came on the PHP Town Hall podcast?
I think it is.
I remember this guy.
Yeah, I do too.
I remember you, Jeremy.
Oh man!
What's up, dude?
Mike.
I remember your fascination with cheese.
Mike Phelps. Yes, I got something for you. 1 second.
Wow. Well,
That's a big microphone.
he must be a brave man wearing shorts those colors. I don't know which one's worse. You're tasting cheeseware or you're tasting shorts. I mean, those things are like every color of the rainbow. I'm like, wow, what's going on?
Is it possible to wear the wiener hat and the cheese hat simultaneously?
Hey, here you go.
Here we go.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
There it is.
And here I was thinking this was a PG-13 hangout. Now you're wieners.
Although I've got Phil Sturgeon's wiener in here too. Where did I put it?
I knew he left something.
Doing with that
something behind.
What you plan on doing with that tonight? I wonder where that's going to be going.
He left his cell phone charger. He left some parts of his cigarettes behind. He left it. Well, he did steal 2 bottles of my alcohol, but that's okay.
You get all that so it works out.
How do you know he didn't borrow it and he's not going to give them back?
He might send them back.
Sounds like he was bartering and you just weren't in on it.
I think so.
We actually almost lost Phil that night. So
I technically think you made off better. I mean, if he only got 2 beers and you got his phone,
Yeah,
I think
know, right?
you're higher up in this trade right now.
I actually left those things in my car, so now I have a bottle of Campari and vermouth in the back.
it's still in your car.
You just you take them.
So wait a minute, what happened with Phil with that day? Because he was he showed up at my door like seriously like 6 in the morning, and you guys I guess we'd gone all over around Chicago looking for him.
Phil woke up on a street corner of forgetting what it is, West Hollywood and North Clark Street.
Ridgewood?
Really?
Or North Ridge, yeah. We picked him up on a street corner. He was he got into some peacock competition with some guy that was friend zoned. They were both hitting on the same.
Oh man, I would have loved to have seen that.
Sorry, wait. Are we broadcasting? Don't broadcast this.
This is actually still broadcasting.
Anyway, so we picked Phil up, and we had to go back to to Sammy's house. And yeah, I didn't realize. Sorry, we woke Sammy up. I'm really sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I went right back to sleep. There's a horse that joined us, so I think it's what's that new Netflix?
BoJack Horseman.
Oh my gosh, the thing is awesome.
Oh, is
I
that
watched the
Matt?
episode already.
Matt's
Yeah,
got the
it's
horse. Now.
Matt turned into BoJack Horseman
Oh, that is with the hot dog hat.
with the hot dog hat. That takes skill.
Oh my gosh, Matt, getting close for the camera. Okay.
What
a
is
little bit of a
BoJack
profile. Can we do a profile shot, maybe? Back up a little bit. Great. Thank you. Wait, no, do it again. Do it again. There we go. Great. These are going right onto Twitter.
Yes.
It's hot in these rhinos.
So, Ramsey, it's good of you to join us. Did you just get a? Oh, you combed your hair.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. Andrew's heading out, but he's.
What does that mean?
I was going to. I can't look away.
He's trying to leave, but he has to
I
watch.
can't-
It's like a train wreck. He's slow motion train wreck.
No, it's not slow motion. If Google Plus right now is like switching rapidly between cameras, it's actually kind of dizzying.
It's too bad you don't know the name of any other services. Sorry, for dredging up the podcast.
Charging it up.
Am I slow motion?
I'm in the worst con here.
Yeah. Is
Am I
Mike
in slow motion?
Is Mike Phelps gone? Mike Phelps is gone. Is he gone? I don't
What
see anybody here. Yeah, how does that guy find us every time?
I don't know, but that one night, I think we talked to him for like 2.5 hours, and he has.
Sammy, if he comes back, careful. I think he just looks for like public hangouts and then joins them.
Nice.
He does it to promote his YouTube channel, I think.
Oh, that is correct.
I'm glad.
To do these.
Hey, do you guys? I'm
On
going to have to
air,
ask for a little bit of advice here. What do you, as far as the format going forward, what do you guys think about maybe zoning in on a very specific topic? I'm afraid that if I do too specific, we just won't get that much. It'll be too much or not enough for an hour. But now, with APIs, it was just such a broad topic. What are your all's thought about the format of PHP table roundtable going forward?
I think you could easily split up some of the content into two podcasts.
Yeah.
Like last time you did, it was functional and real-time programming, or functional and async.
Yeah, that was sort of an oversight on my part because I really thought they were more related than they actually were, or at least the way that we discussed them.
I guess if there's an "and" in the title, that's probably a sign.
Yeah, it's probably, huh?
Well, you gotta figure too. When
Trying to have 10 people on.
Yeah. There you go. Ben was saying what I was going to say.
What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
What'd you say, Ben?
I said I think you should definitely have 10 people on.
10 people. To talk about something really concentrated.
I'm just kidding.
Wait, how many?
And the
How
table
many,
that is round.
how many nights at the round table? How many nights at the round
I
table?
think there was 8, right?
8. Okay.
Was there? I don't know. Google could answer that.
Also, you guys are all aware that Sammy's table is a square, right?
I was going to ask about that. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, we cracked this on the podcast on Saturday night.
Well, this one's a new one, a new table. It's
Still
Whoa,
looks
careful
square,
there.
It still looks rectangular.
It has rounded edges. What are you trying
it
to
does have
show us?
rounded edges.
Rounded edges. It's a Web 2.0 table.
It's anti-aliased.
All right, so yeah.
What I was going to say is you just got to plan. I know when I do my podcast and it's just me and Jeff, like we can get through a lot more stuff because there's just two of us. When you've got guests on, you just kind of have to take that into account that every topic you talk about is probably going to take longer than it would if it was just you and someone else or you and even two other people. So
Right.
more just like a planning thing. Like if you got 5 or 6 people on every time, time you get to a topic, you're going to want to hear from most of those people, and that's just gonna take longer than it would otherwise.
Right, and I feel like one of the concepts behind this was that I wanted to make sure that I didn't assume that anybody listening to the podcast had to know a lot about stuff before they could understand what was going on. And I still want to keep that principle, but I feel like if I hold too tightly to that, it really kind of hinders like what we could talk about as far as the latest and greatest thing that maybe a new best practice or something like that, because we spend a lot of time kind of explaining everything that we're doing. So I'm kind of wondering if I should sort of prefix each episode with like, hey, this is going to be a really basic one. Hey, this one's going to be a really advanced topic. So that, if you don't know much, if you don't have much background, it might be hard to catch up. Because I really want to make this more educational than just sort of just back and forth interview or kind of thing. What are your all's thoughts on that?
What about doing like a series, like on the API, where it's like, hey, here's the intro to APIs, and we got very broad topics. Then more complex. Now let's jump into HADIAS. Let's jump into response types.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So like, scheduling out some series.
Yeah, you just have to kind of set like that lowest, because the challenge is you want to help everybody that you can, and there's always going to be people kind of beyond what you're talking about that aren't going to be interested, and there's always going to be people that are inexperienced or don't have the time doing it that aren't going to quite be able to come up to that level. So it's just, I don't know. In my mind, I think it's just kind of having that expectation of what your lowest reachable listener might look like,
right?
From a skill set standpoint.
Yeah, I guess I have to define who is the most basic person we're going to try to reach.
Yeah, because you could go all the way to the beginning.
Your concept.
What was that, Ben?
I think your concept one. I was just, and I think the concept of the roundtable is a really good one, where everyone holds any superiority to another one. So when you get people on the podcast of varying skill levels, you get a bunch of different viewpoints.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I think that you have a format. It actually helps differentiate the podcast from others that are out there.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for that feedback. That helps to know that it's at least got a good direction going for it. But what is actually, I would love to have you on eventually. What would you say your top 3 favorite things to talk about are? They don't even have to be necessarily specifically PHP related. Just
beer is in the top 3. I know it.
You know Ben's top 3?
Beer is in there.
Beer?
It's got to be, right? Am I right, Ben?
Probably.
Yeah. You could have Ben Ramsey and Sean Coates on. Sean Coates does home brewing.
You have to get Andrei Zubevsky to talk about beer as well.
So does Omni?
Oh, Omni Brews. Yeah, he's
Omni Adams.
Yeah, I guess the technical topics. I guess my top 3, like APIs, HTTP. Those are at least the top 2. But I mean, I've dabbled in a whole bunch of other stuff. It's hard to pick a whole bunch of stuff.
Would you didn't you give what'd you talk about at PHP Tech?
One of the talks was about contributing to PHP Core.
Ah, okay, yeah, the
array column.
Array column, yeah, because that was a great one. Because actually,
that talk again at True North.
Nice. I'm actually wanting to have a PHP internals talk and get like Sarah, Liz,
Derek.
Derek, and get all those guys on. So, would you be interested in maybe joining that one?
Sure.
Sweet. I'll. I think that one might be episodes 5, 6, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's going to be probably closer to the end of October.
I'll be the beginner one on that podcast.
No, but it'd be great to have that perspective of because I know you said that you actually you weren't a hardcore C programmer when you did it, and it was just sort of like you popped in and it ends up in PHP Core or PHP Source, which is awesome. I think it's a great story to add to that roundtable concept.
If you don't want to feel like the beginner, I can jump in. I submitted one patch and it has a bug request. It has a bug
nice.
Attached to it.
That's cool.
I think
though.
Grumpy Programmer just popped in.
Grumpy!
Yay, Grumpy!
Hey.
Where in the world is the goatee?
I have some alternate facial hair these days.
It's not really. Is it even a T anymore?
Are you the evil twin of Grumpy Programmer?
It looks like a Super Mario.
Oh, hold on. I gotta reconnect to my computer.
Maybe you're the good twin.
Yeah, what would the
Good
evil
twin.
twin look like?
There is no evil twin, only one.
Did
He
the
is,
office
he
man-
is the evil twin.
Did
There's
the office
actually,
manager fire your beard?
I feel like I'm getting manhandled by Chris right now. This is
No,
scary.
I just got bored of it.
This is camera tricks to remind us that he's taller.
I'm wearing my shirt in honor of Keith Casey today, too.
Hey, I took you up on your challenge.
Good for you, man. It's good money.
He also has a wish list that you can buy. MT Dowling, Mr. Mike. Wait, it's Michael, right? Dowling.
Michael Dowling.
Yeah, Mikey. Yeah, he has a wish list that he shared on Twitter. I think when somebody asked him, it was probably actually Chris who asked him, like, do you have like a Twitter or a wish list that you could buy something off of it? I noticed he had a book on there that was Introduction to Programming in Haskell. Haskell, however you say it.
Careful. That's how we lost T-Bolt and Igor.
Michael's already dabbling in Lua and Clojure right now, so
Oh, really?
don't buy him the Haskell book. That's all he needs. Him doing Haskell at work.
He's just looking for a little closure.
Oh!
I hate Chris. Oh, he left.
That pun drove him away.
He was like, screw this.
NM.
So
Jeremy
is he-
took off
so is
his hat.
Michael-
I guess I can ditch mine now.
No, I'll put it back on. Which one do you want? Cheese?
I don't know if I want to wear a hat.
We already have a hot dog. I'll get the cheese back.
All right, there we go.
That's so appropriate. So Michael, Jeremy, does Michael talk about functional programming stuff at work?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Jim Lind.
Larry
I guess is how you
Garfield
say it.
gave,
He was saying that this video
Hey,
call is full. Sorry.
he's running for Pope.
He's running for Pope.
Yeah, I heard that.
Sorry, man. I think
There's Chris. Chris is back.
Yay, Chris is in. I think there's a limit of 10 people on Hangout right now. I think we're about maxed
I
out.
just switched from, because I was on my iPad, and every time some other people talked, it went all robotic, so I just switched to using them.
Nice.
I was going to tell you, Chris, I was right there with Michael at work when you were contacting me about donating something, and he was extremely humbled and grateful for that. So
Nice.
Well, I just hope he wastes the money on something stupid like I waste all the money from my books.
All right, I'm gonna hop off so Lynn can get on and take some NyQuil and die.
Yeah, I'm going to bed too.
I'm on the West Coast, so I haven't eaten dinner yet. So
Braggart.
I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.
Thanks
Alright.
so much for being on.
See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
So it looks like, Jim, if you're still around, you can probably pop in. We just opened up like 3 spots. 4 spots, looks like. Yeah.
So someone was asking about functional programming.
Yeah, that was actually one of the topic for episode 2. And I really want to go back to that topic and do something specific about functional programming and how it relates to PHP.
Who did you have on that topic?
I had a guy, Glenn Hinkle, who is the core developer for Modulicious, which is a Perl framework. I know that's like Chris's favorite language. Let's see, who do I have on for functional programming? Well, I could just open up the notes here.
Is there a website? I guess there's a website.
Yeah, I could just go to phproundtable.com and actually look at the have all those people listed there.
There we are.
I'm so bad with remembering this kind of stuff. Already in episode 4, I can't remember. Yeah, so we had Jeremy. Jeremy was here. Jeremy McCullough, Chris Bowden, who is a core contributor to React PHP, Glenn Hinkle with Modulicious, and then Kyle Schatzfeld. And Kyle wasn't more about the functional programming side, other than just kind of representing Chicago. And I did, I'm just wanting to have some diversity on different levels of people on the round
Sammy,
table.
also he was not in episode 3. So
He was not?
Go at the website. You had him listed in WorstCon episode 3.
Oh, yeah, I need to update that, because
I think
he
you're
was
missing-
going to be. And I actually need to add Chris to that
Chris
list.
Tankersley.
Yeah.
And David
and
Bookman, DBU.
Yeah, actually, there's quite a few people I need to add to that list. Heather Franzak. She has a Twitter account now, so I can add her.
So I was going to suggest that Larry Garfield was at Madison. and gave a great talk on some functional programming tips. And
he was actually the you of that episode at the last minute. He found out about it at the last minute and was wondering why he was not invited.
I know, it sucked because he's like right here in Chicago too.
Was the me? Is that what you said?
What was that?
I can't hear.
Did you say he was the you?
Yeah, he was the you of that episode. It played out like exactly the same way on Twitter.
Like the female sheep or the Ben Ramsey?
Ben Ramsey.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense then.
To Ramsey something has become many different things. I don't know what Chris is doing.
Chris's face is frozen. Is he actually moving?
Oh no, he's definitely moving. Oh.
Or is this a staring contest and we're just losing?
I'm just tweeting about how sponsors are being stingy for this damn conference.
Oh no! Like, is that a problem?
That's a huge problem.
We all need to tweet and tell people to sponsor Truth.
Especially when Macola doesn't come and doesn't get Tengen to sponsor things.
I've talked to who have I talked to? Mike can appeal to this of how hard it was to get money out of us for Midwest, and they've only gotten worse about this.
Yeah, because my other organizer there, Pete, he just emailed me about some stuff, and it's like, yeah, we have, excuse me, exactly one sponsor that's given us cash, and everybody else is trying to.
This is your conference or another conference?
Yes, it's for True North, and everybody else is trying to like exchange shit in exchange. I'm like, I'm thinking, do these people think that flying in speakers is like free?
Right.
Like, I may have to kick out Ramsey if we don't get any more sponsors.
Wait, who's trying to exchange?
I'm paid for him.
I know you are.
Company is paying for me.
Right. Sponsors are trying to exchange stuff, like give you books or something in exchange?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, okay, we have Microsoft who's doing the venue, so that's cool. And Zend is trying to dump a bunch of elephants on us instead of giving us money. Okay. And I don't know. I'm kind of mad at Pete because he didn't step up and put the right effort into being the sponsor wrangler. So
months ago, I guess.
Well, yeah, like the time to do this was several months ago. Not try begging for cash now. So that doesn't make me very happy, but. Whatever. I mean, the way that we did the numbers, basically, if we sell, I think we did the budget. We basically need like 70 tickets to break even, but then that means no perks for other stuff, right? Like it means we don't have money for prizes for the hackathon and other stupid shit like that. So,
what is the lowest sponsor rate?
There's like the community one, which is like $100. There's a sponsorship. There's a sponsorship prospectus that you can download. It goes from like $100 up to like I think like the platinum one is like $3,000 or something. So
if WorstCon wanted to sponsor and then also maybe give away like a sausage sampler as a prize, I'm being totally serious right now.
I'll tell you what. If WorstCon sponsors, I can't with MuleSoft right now, but I'll do the community as well if WorstCon does.
Well, that'd be all right.
I think we could easily get a bunch of community sponsors.
Yeah, that would be good. Like, just let me look at the stupid thing here because I don't do any of it.
Can we get a
make sure? I try to make
routine sponsor.
Also, do you accept magic cards?
No, sadly, no.
Okay, I'm out in that case. What about like squishy mules? I can send those.
So what do we've got? We've got platinum, which is 3,500, gold, which is 2,200, silver, which is 1,200. Bronze is 600. Community is 100. It's like I'm not worried the thing's gonna go under. I'm just like annoyed, because I'm like, I guess the correct term is I'm grumpy. that the sponsor thing is not being handled the way I would have handled if I was doing it, but I'm not doing it, and I can only be grumpy about it and not really yell at Pete. So. It's not easy, full-time jobs, all that other shit people want to do. My job is relatively easy because it's done in 2 big parts where I do all the speaker stuff and then me picking up speakers from the airport and all that other stuff, which I don't mind doing. So, like I said, I try to treat the speakers the way I want to be treated. Since I'm a big-time prima donna, these speakers are going to be treated pretty good.
He's a prima donna.
Yeah, like I tell our like office assistant at work, talent expects to be treated like talent. So
That's your cat, right?
no, at Rove, Priscilla, who does all the stuff at Rove. Yeah, my cat.
Roav.
Yeah, Roav, as Ed likes to call them. No, we have this woman Priscilla who's like handles all the billing, and she sends me my money ahead of time, and she does a really good job. So I'm
Sounds like a really good person.
yes.
So, Chris, would you be interested in coming on the PHP Roundtable to talk about a specific topic in the future?
I can talk about anything.
I was about to actually ask you if there was a topic that was not even testing related that you'd like to join in on.
Sure, I can talk about all sorts of shit.
No, I think last time I talked to you was at Tech, and you were talking about you kind of give the same unit test talk, and you were kind of wanting to do something a little different. So I didn't know if there was something that you were sort of brewing with that you wanted to kind of talk about, or.
Not really. I mean, I can, like I said, whenever you want a guest to come on and stir up some shit, I'm your man. So
that sounds awesome.
Kind of, I've been doing this an extremely long time. I can talk about all sorts of things.
Yeah, totally. Is there any what would you say your top 3 things are that you'd like to talk about?
Well, I would say the testing stuff is probably the number one because I'm still doing that because really I can't give up doing that quite yet.
Yeah.
Another topic that bugs me too but it makes me sound like an even grumpier old man, is about professionalism in programming and
nice.
why is everything so goddamn broken? And
right.
But I don't know if that's that entertaining.
No, I think it's a really important topic too.
I don't know. Other than that, I mean, the testing is the thing I do most of the time. But I don't know. It's just like we could talk about weird hobbies. Lord knows everybody here has a bunch of them. Magic players, swing dancers, beer aficionados. There's lots.
What's your weird hobby?
Hats. I like hats.
Well, of course, mine is the stupid time and money I sink into playing Magic the Gathering, and I've been doing the simulation baseball stuff for like 20 years, and there's all sorts of shit.
And do you have a guitar there? Is that a guitar or a bass?
Well, it's a bass. It's a bass.
Are we gonna jam? Because I have a guitar here too.
I have a guitar.
No way. Are we gonna make music right now? Do we just create a band?
I'm in a hotel room, so I don't have it with me.
Yeah, and I don't think doing it over Google Hangout is a good idea either.
I keep artwork like this on my walls at home.
It's gonna be nice.
All right, this is our song. We all live in a Google Hangout. Google Hangout.
Oh God.
That's the worst rendition of Yellow Submarine I've ever heard.
I'm going to use that for the promo for this episode.
I think you should. Hey, you were asking earlier about other things, and I tend not to think about like crazy things that I want to talk about like on the spot. But now that you guys have been mentioning things, I thought of a few other things that are actually really kind of important to me. One thing, like testing has become really important to me, though I've been hesitant to submit a lot of stuff on it, just because other people like Chris and Sebastian and all are much more knowledgeable in the area and speak a lot more. But the thing that I really kind of like, I don't know, masochistically enjoy is mocking objects.
Cool.
So you make fun of them, Ben. You say you're not worthy. You're not up to the task.
That's how I do it. I look at an object and I mock it. I talk down to it.
Well, I mean, I do. Because I did this with. I don't know. Have you guys heard of the Code Mentor, codementor.io, that website? I know Ben Edmonds.
Yeah. No.
Well, there's a couple of these sites that have kind of come up where people can. You get developers sign up for it, and then they can like pair up with people, and they'll get paid for their time and stuff. I mean, getting paid for the time is not a thing because Lord knows I don't want to do consulting work. That's why I write books instead. And but I did like an office hours thing for them last Friday, and it was interesting talking to people about the testing stuff. And people were like, "How do I even just get started?" And I think that finally I've been trying to decide what book I'm going to write this winter. And I think what I got to do is I think I have to redo my first one and make it more like getting started with testing from ground zero, because all the time I get from people, people tell me all the time, I don't know where to start, and I'm like,
not the World Trade Center, you mean actual, just from like no experience.
I think that's too soon, Jeremy.
We're not broadcasting, are we?
Yes. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we are.
Just killing my personal brand. Go on.
I don't even have a personal brand to kill, Jeremy. I suspect HR from Mongo is going to talk to you tomorrow, though. So that's what I think I have to, because that's the thing I get all the time. How do I get started? How do I get into this? And I'm like thinking, well, shit, I did this 10 years ago. I don't remember. I just do it now. So I'm thinking that's kind of, it's like the whole mentoring and teaching people stuff and all those things are of great interest to me, and I just feel bad I don't have enough time to teach everybody everything.
Well, maybe you could be an enabler and come on, and we could have like a mentoring session where we just talk about how to become a mentor and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would definitely be up for that. That's something that's near and dear to me, especially when I look at all the work I poured into Matt Frost, and now he's a little mini internet superstar.
Well, I know Liz is actually really big into mentoring stuff, and I want to have her on for a PHP internal talk, but she might be another good one for mentoring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because she was the one that got me involved in all this stuff too. So
she got all of that started. Yeah.
She's a beast. She got me she had me contribute to the PHP source by submitting a test. So
well, there you go. She's gonna be a true north, which is gonna be awesome.
Oh, nice.
She took over because Beth, the other Elizabeth. We have Elizabeth Marie Smith, and then we had Naramore, but she doesn't do any PHP anymore. And then we have Beth Tucker Long, so she couldn't make it because she's starting a new gig with doing a new gig with CodeClimate actually.
Yeah.
She got hired as evangelist for them. So we swapped out one Liz for another. So
yeah, she wanted Beth Tucker Long wanted to make it, but she had said that I think they're doing like a training that same time period.
Yeah, they're doing it, and it's like a retreat as well, like a company retreat.
And it's in Bali.
Yeah, I can see why she's not going to turn that down to come to Canada. I don't blame her. Hell, I would scrub this conference if I could go to Bali in November. I'd say, sorry guys, I can't go. Something's come up.
Hey Pete, you're going to have to run the conference yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, Pete and Vic, you're going to have to do this show. What's that beer you were drinking there, Ben?
This is a Dogfish Head India Pale Ale.
I will raise you a Sculpin IPA.
Yay, Sculpin! Where's Bo? We need Bo on here. We discovered this on the last episode, or the 2 episodes ago, with that Bo's logo taken from the beer.
It's from the same 6-pack. It took me drinking this beer to realize that Sculpin was a fish. I thought Bo just randomly had a fish as his logo.
Sculpin is a fish.
I think Bo's wife actually made the logo, right?
Yes.
She's the talented one in the family.
Has anyone else bought one of her artworks? Huh?
I have not.
Never.
I got one. They're beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Well, not all of them, but most of them. Sorry for killing the conversation.
What card is that stuck to your? It's like just a spare black Lotus you had laying around, right?
Yeah. It's let's see. I don't know, what is this? There we go. This piece of crap from N15, whatever that is.
Can't even read it.
Pull it back from the camera a little bit.
Ooh.
Pull it backwards. We gotta focus. Backwards. Backwards.
A little bit more. Almost there.
Keep moving, and now he falls over the guy laying behind him.
Better 1, better 2.
Is that better?
1, better 2.
1.
Is that better?
Better 1. 2.
There.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amphibian Path Mage. Yeah.
It's not very good. That's why it's taped to my head.
No.
I wish I understood what this magic stuff was all about.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
Okay.
About
Well,
magic.
Sammy,
Magic.
Sammy, do you have too much money? Is that the problem?
No,
Maybe you could
like
sponsor True North PHP. I mean, it's a matter of spending money.
my choreographer and dance coach is into it, so I would like to be able to talk some of that language.
Oh, no, run.
I want to hear about the court. Oh, wait. Were you the one doing swing dance at PHP Tech?
Yeah, that was me and Aaron.
Yeah, you and Aaron. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Aaron does swing dance?
Yeah,
Aaron,
she actually does blues
Aaron
dancing.
from
Now, she was schooling him on.
Minneapolis.
Yeah, she does blues and Lindy Hop, and since Lindy Hop is sort of related to the dance that I do, we sort of did this hybrid dance of the two.
Hybrid Lindy. That sounds
Yeah.
like a riot.
Yep.
I have to look this up. I have no idea what these words mean.
Yeah,
Now I know how you all feel
does.
when Chris and I talk about magic cards.
I think it has a TV show called So You Think You Can Dance. But that's it.
Well,
I
that's
see this now.
one of the guys from West Coast Swing. One of our champions was So You Think You Can Dance, and he won the first season. I think it was the second season, maybe.
Mhm.
Oh, what is this? What card is that?
That's Tendrils of Agony.
Is that a good thing?
What are you looking at?
Hold on, I'm going to take it out because it was in a little sleep. Maybe this will
Your
be better.
your camera isn't even on.
My camera's on. Yeah. Here, hello,
Chris's
this
camera's.
is-
Wait,
hello,
Chris's camera's
Jeremy.
on.
Here, I'm turning up the volume. Do you hear it now?
Oh!
Oh.
Wait, where is this tendrils? Is Chris's camera on?
Yeah. Are you
Yeah.
being serious?
Jeremy.
I know. I really can't see it.
Oh, okay. Well, he was just giving you the finger, so that's the summary of everything.
One
You know what would
second.
be funny? I would like to get Chris and Phil Sturgeon on at the same time and see how explicit we can make a podcast.
Wow, yeah. Podcast gone, PHP Roundtable gone wild is how
There it
is.
is. All right, now I can see you.
No, I was just showing the nice little promo, Tendrils of Agony. And if people want to see how dumb things are in Magic, hold on, let me show you a card that's currently worth $200 if it was in mint condition.
Is that an old promo?
It's a Friday night one. Oh, here's one. Here's a really nice one. I paid $225 for it.
What? Wait, for one card? Wait, is this the whole like Are You Rich kind of
This is
thing?
this is why we told you to run.
Chains of Mephistocles?
No, this beautiful altered volcanic.
Oh,
island.
Volcanic Island. Okay. With the Birds of Paradise.
Yeah, so that's an altered card.
8th edition Birds of Paradise.
What is an altered card?
This is
where
not
they
the
paint over.
this is not the original artwork.
So a normal card has these borders and stuff. With an altar, they will usually extend the art around everything except the instruction box, and you have to leave the title. And if there's a cost up there, that has to
Here,
stay.
just here. I have one. So I have an older one. So I will show so Ben can see the difference.
So I assume that they only printed so many of these, right?
So
There are
there's the
there are certain cards that will never be reprinted. Basically, certain cards that were printed before '95 for collector reasons, they said they will never reprint. That is one of them. So those things have accrued in value.
So
And
this
there's
is the original on the right that I got
Right.
I got for a reasonable amount of money because these spiked back in like January of this year. They almost doubled in price. So this is the altar one that I bought. So to get one of these, this is one that has
200.
Yeah, in mint condition,
cheap.
it was about 200. This was not mint condition. I paid 110 for this one.
Good thing to do is you take a card that's pretty beat up and you get that painted on, and then it
Yep.
ends up looking nice after anyway, and you got the card cheaper.
Yep.
So
So that's why we said,
I'm-
Sammy, don't. Just run.
Yeah,
I
dance
Save-
dance
Save
is
your money
super
for
expensive.
Save your money
so-
for dance shoes.
Yeah, it's dance shoes. These dance competitions are several $1,000s a piece, and I go to a lot of them.
whatever,
So.
whatever Andrew just chatted is hilarious.
That's right.
I just got out nerded.
It's saying something to get out nerded by somebody who is literally building Docker containers right now. So
All talking to us.
I'm listening to you guys because it's
And
fascinating.
then just to
Worth
show
that,
even less common sense. So I've started buying foreign versions of the cards to go into this deck. So for example, here's a card in Korean. I think it's Korean.
Dark Ritual.
It's a Dark Ritual in Korean. Yep.
I can sort of nerd you guys. I have an
Oh, look
actual
at that.
comic book in my office.
Oh.
Chris,
Yeah.
fun fact, Chris used to run a comic book store.
That's right.
Did you really?
I owned a comic book store. Yes.
Know that? When was that?
with your sister,
19,
right?
Yes, 1995, 96.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Did you sell magic cards?
Yes, that's the only part of the business that made money.
Was Pong, or what is it? Is it Pong? Is that the name?
Did you just
Not
say Pong? Like, what are you, like 12 years old?
What is, no, those little circle things.
Oh, Pogs.
Pog. Yeah.
Pogs.
Yeah. Did you sell those as a?
Chris actually had one of the largest slammer collections in the in Ontario.
No, I didn't.
It was all crazy 8 balls as far as the eye can see. Crazy.
It was the largest. It was the second largest. No, it wasn't.
Who had Pogs? Pogs?
I had Pogs in middle school.
No, with the comic book store, the magic cards were the only part of the business that made any money, and we lasted a year before we just said screw it, and that was it. Because the problem is when you sell comics, I imagine the situation hasn't changed at all, almost 20 years later, that there are minimum orders and you can't return anything. So when you buy, that's why any comic book store that's been around for any period of time has boxes upon boxes upon boxes of back issues of things, because those are all comics that they bought and paid for that they couldn't sell.
That sucks.
So that's why it didn't work.
Does anyone remember the episode from Star Trek, the original series, called The City on the Edge of Tomorrow? The City at the Edge of Tomorrow. It was written by Harlan Ellison. Well, anyway, they recently did a comic of that, and it's like, I don't know how many parts it is, but a comic book store that's near my house, I went in there and had found the second edition, or the second issue, and I wanted to get the first, and he said the same thing that Chris just said, basically. They only ordered so many because they didn't realize because they don't wonder why they can't send back, but they didn't realize it was going to sell out so quickly, and it sold out like in just a couple hours. So that happens all the time. I find that kind of industry really strange, because for years I've always wanted to order the books online and just have them sent to me, but it's really difficult to find a place that'll do that for you. I don't know, maybe Chris
now it's digital delivery, but a lot of comic book stores do. Like, there's a big comic book chain in New York called Midtown Comics, and they I obviously just go in there to look for magic cards and randomly, but there's plenty of business guys that'll come in and they basically subscribe to issues. You basically come in, they have a bag waiting for you of that week's comics that you want. It's really interesting.
I've had that before, and I'll subscribe to books. They'll come into the store. You have to pick them up. But the store that I used to do this at, here in Georgia,
they would mail it to your house?
No, they wouldn't mail it to the house. And if you didn't come within a certain period of time, they would put the books back on the shelf and sell them.
Oh, okay.
The place where the shop in my town will keep them for months.
I guess it just depends on the store.
I live in a slightly, I don't know, sort of 100,000 people city, so it's not a small town. Not huge either, though.
Yeah, that's a pretty crappy policy. They're going to keep your money and then put the issues back on the shelf. I know, when we ran the store, we did that same thing with pull lists, give people a thing, and they would fill out, these are the series I want to follow, and when the comics came in, we would put them off to the side, and people came in, but just the fact that you couldn't return anything, and it's like, this is where I also learned to not work with family is one of those issues too. But
yep.
But in that industry, yeah, if you don't sell 3-year orders, then you're not going to survive. And the magic cards, with the money we made off the magic cards, weren't enough to offset the other stuff. So.
Hey, Chris, you mentioned Code Mentor. Is that like AirPair, or have you heard of it?
I think it's a similar type of idea.
So you've actually worked with Code Mentor, though? You've actually done it?
I did it on last Friday. I did this. They had an office hours thing, so they had 15 or 20 people come on, and I went on for an hour and took questions and tried to figure things out.
So is that meant for group trainings?
No, no, they do one-on-one, but they do. Go to the site, codementor.io. It's meant to for freelancers or looking for people who can do some one-on-one work with them.
In person, or is this online?
No, it's online. Codementor.io.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Phil did not have very good things to say about AirPair.
I was
yeah.
curious about that.
No, I mean, 'cause we all make fun of him because he had his photo all over the place, but he, the amount of, they try and structure the whole process, so he's used to, he looked at it as an alternative because he would tweet out and say like, oh, especially after Capture went under, I have free time, let me try and do some consulting, put a feeler out there, and you get responses. And then he could, like, somebody responds within like an hour, they could be up and going. AirPair, he had to jump through the various hoops and like they have a hip chat room to set up. So just the overhead of even scheduling to get an hour of consulting, you had to put in like an extra 30 to 40 minutes, at least.
Wow.
So it's, and a large scale, it was kind of a goofy system to go through. That's why I'm curious how Code Mentor is.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I don't have any plans to actually do any pairing on there for money because I'm like I said before, I don't want to do consulting stuff. I would rather work on my own stuff because I find that more fulfilling and.
When you have you have your 4-day work weeks.
Yeah, so Fridays are for me. So.
You're like a selfish version of Code Rabbi.
Yeah, I guess you can look at it that way.
So Jim Lind tweeted at me and said that
get him to come in here.
I guess does he have the link? Does someone?
He doesn't want to come in here, but
okay.
I can send you the link.
Anyway, he said that he pre-orders from DCBS or DCB Service monthly. It's at DCB Service, and you have to like pre-order, a few months in advance, but you get 40 to 50% off cover price, and they ship the books to you. So I might actually check that out. That sounds pretty cool. And then
40 to 50% off cover. That means whoever's doing all the purchasing is getting really good prices on volume because that's extremely hard to make money when you're paying half. When you're only getting half for the cover price.
This is
have like a storefront or something.
This is a case of is like the local comic book store something that you want to support and keep going, which is
that's true.
Like a case because like I could order Magic cards online and I do certainly, and then the stores certainly in New York are a bit more expensive, but then sometimes I feel like patronizing them just because like if they're gone then you go play at people's houses, but it's like a social gathering space.
That's why I go to a local store.
Yeah, I mean, comic book culture itself has changed. Like, you don't have little kids going in and getting. Now it's mostly movies kind of support the comic books themselves, for at least the publishers, but it's still a matter of the stores.
Yeah, like I actually tend to buy most of my cards online because the store I go to doesn't have enough selection of stuff.
Yeah, there's that as well. Yeah.
Because like I'm not at the point where I'm like early on it was made more sense to support the local store to buy stuff in bulk. But now I'm at the point where I only need a few cards to finish things off. Or
you support them by going there to go to their play and do their events, but not going to buy singles.
The comic book store I go to doesn't sell games or host games. They only sell comic books.
As like just to be strict about it because they don't want to get down that road.
I have no idea. There was a game store just like not a quarter mile from them, and that game store could not stay open. And they would even host games and stuff. It was strange.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, but the comic book store stays open. I mean, it's a good comic book store. They're good people there, but I wish they had games because I would go there for their games, but they don't.
Like early on, it was made more sense.
There's Jim.
To support the local store to buy stuff in bulk.
Hey, Jim.
And now I'm at the point where I only need a few cards to finish things off.
Support by going there. Go to the play and do their events, but not going to buy stuff.
The comic book store I go to.
Seems like a minute behind us.
This is incredible deja vu.
Okay. Jim, close the other tab. Stop streaming us.
I have no idea. There was a game store. I like hearing myself, so letting it keep playing.
See, this is why nobody talks to you anymore, Ben, because you're so full of yourself now about the APIs.
Oh my gosh. Oh, there's one other thing I wanted to bring up. You guys were talking about what was the service, Chris, you were talking about?
Code Mentor.
Okay, Code Mentor. There's something I had been using for a little while called Exorcism.io. It's not quite the same thing, but it's a crowdsourced code review. So they have these different exercises. It's EXERCISM.io.
Yeah, they got a write-up in Wired today.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've met the woman who set it up, Katrina Evans. I met her at Oradev when I went and spoke in Sweden.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's her.
Okay.
I met her. Really nice person. But it was kind of just like, oh, hey, I know her. So it was kind of a neat thing to see.
Pretty cool service. It's all command line driven. You use it through GitHub, and you complete exercises and submit them, and other people can review them. It's a good way to learn some new stuff.
You know, one of the things I've always been trying to figure out how to do is I wanted to do some testing exercises where I want to do like Boris or one of the other PHP shells and get
I like Boris.
And get PHP unit hooked into it, so then you could give people exercises. They could type in code and then they could run the testing things right inside the shell and see it interactive. I just can never find anything that seemed like it wasn't going to be a humongous pain in the ass to try to get it to all work.
PSYSH. I mean, as a shell, I'd recommend that. What is going on?
Interact. Oh, I've never heard of this one.
This is made by Bob the Cow, who's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that one. What? No, I don't think I've heard of that one. Was it PY? What is it?
PSYSH.
Right. .org.
Yeah, he used to work with John Wage and I at OpenSky. I started using this. I generally refuse to use projects made by people I know. Whatever. But I was using Facebook's PHP shell, which was actually, I think, written in Python, and they didn't maintain that for the longest time. And then Bob, his name is Justin, convinced me to give this a shot. And it works really well.
Yeah, because that's what I was trying to set up some kind of like
it's pretty acceptable.
PHP. I was trying to figure out some kind of PHP testing koans type site where people could like type in their code and they could test it right inside on the shell, so they could see the feedback loop happen a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'll set aside some time on one of my Fridays to take a look at it.
The Boris one's pretty cool. It behaves very similarly to the Python one, so that's why I liked it.
So I remember Jim because I sat next to him at the Cubs game back at Tech.
Yeah. Yep.
Because remember, it took me a while to tweak. I'm like, who's this guy sitting next to me? He looks so familiar. And I'm like,
speaking of comic books, he's got them all over the wall in the background.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
There we go.
Holy moly! You don't like comic books, do you, Jim?
Jeez. I guess that's an alternative to using wallpaper.
All right. Anyway, it's bedtime for grumpy programmers. I'll talk to you all later.
Thanks, Chris. It's good to hang out with you, man.
Out nerd again.
I live far enough away from any actual comic book store that I'd save a lot of time and money buying them online. So.
Oh, I just realized you had racks. Okay, interesting. I thought they were just taped to the wall.
No, they're thin pieces of wood that I cut those slits out of, so they're sitting on there.
Are you going to be a future pope for reals?
He's running for election.
Take me, but
I mean, you'd have to take the bishopsy of Wisconsin first, wouldn't you? Or the archdiocese, perhaps? I mean, there's levels.
Any Catholic male can be pope. The college of whoever's, they vote, and technically any Catholic male can be voted in. But I'm not technically a Catholic male, so it puts me a little outside. Actually,
you'd have to convert.
I'm pretty sure this is like a grooming process from childhood, though.
Yeah, probably.
It's essentially like running for president, where you have to scrub all of your past.
They use like lots of combs and brushes. Grooming process.
Oh, sorry.
It's the puns. I can't believe it.
Sorry.
Jeremy, you should have been on top of that.
Yeah, I've lost it. So
my
who's
jokes are so highbrow.
Is that another grooming? More grooming?
No, that's not a grooming pun.
Okay.
Hey.
So
Self-deprecation.
Yes.
No.
you were saying something, Sammy.
No, I just did you guys see if Laravel responded to our troll PR yet?
No, but CodeIgniter was closed today.
Yeah, and they locked it too. I was like, man, they're just like WordPress.
That's what you're supposed to do when you get a troll PR.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
If someone's gonna tell me this is Nikita Popov, I'm gonna giggle like a schoolgirl, but I don't think it is. So who's this Nick? They're muted. Yeah, Laravel I think is still open, and then so that's the only one that's still open. That's our only hope. Obi-Wan Kenobi, Obi-Wan Otwell.
What'd you say?
Laravel's our only hope. Obi-Wan Otwell.
Yep, exactly. Obi-Wan Otwell. He might get the official Phil Sturgeon's wiener, because I feel like we should send this to the winner of the PR. PR so far.
I think that's going to be Josh Lockhart.
Right now, Josh Lockhart is in the lead for this right
It's
now.
the only one that responded to the troll pull request with a pun.
Yep, it was lovely.
So tonight was the first night I'm trying out TweetDeck to keep track of all this PHP Roundtable stuff, and I'm completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's actually awesome. I have it open. I've had it open since the first episode, and it's great.
Ben, do they use array column for this? This is like ridiculous. There's like
what?
Do they use array column for all these?
On TweetDeck?
Yeah, the array column function.
Yeah, they use array column on TweetDeck.
Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to hear. No, it's just a lot of scrolling windows.
Everyone uses array column.
Yeah.
They use it in Ruby on Rails.
They fork a PHP process.
That's what makes everything happen.
It's pinnacle of efficiency.
I gotta head out.
Okay.
Thanks,
Who's that?
man. Yeah,
Is that
thanks,
Andrew or
Mike.
Jim? Oh, that's Mike. Okay.
Yeah,
Make sure you get a hot dog this week, Mike.
I'm totally getting a hot dog. I don't care how long it takes. All day,
Take photos. Sammy, give him the. Sammy, are you going with him?
Oh no, I was about to say I'm not going to go, but like we should definitely meet up while you're here.
Mike,
For
are
sure.
you in Chicago?
Yeah, yep, I'm flying in tomorrow.
Well, he's going to the Chicago user group.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully maybe Kyle Schatzel can take you.
Yeah, because I'm saying I'm in town until like the 27th, I think.
But get a hot dog hat. You will get a free drink when you make it to the front of the line with that, and make sure you use our hashtag.
Wait, where do I get a hot dog hat?
Hot Dogs. Where were you? Like, bro, do you even Twitter?
No, I don't Twitter. I got this chirper thing. I'm just going wild with it.
Sammy will set you up. But,
I'll hook you up, man. I'll hook you up. Yeah, when you get here, we'll hang out.
But
That sounds
definitely get the hat from him, because Doug will recognize you with that.
Nice. Okay. Sounds like a plan. I'll catch you guys tomorrow or later.
All right.
I'm probably gonna head out too. Am I the only one not in Chicago?
I'm in New Jersey, so.
I'm in Atlanta right now.
I realized that when I said north of Boston and south of Canada, I had to double check my geography and make sure that Chicago didn't also fit that. But no. No, Chicago is slightly south of Boston. Just a little bit.
My coworker explained to me the interstate highway system, like I-80, I-20, etc., is all based on height. Did not understand. I did never realize that. It makes sense though.
It's based on height.
So Interstate 1 is over by California, and then you have Interstate 95 is on the East Coast, and then I-80 is at a northern parallel, and then I-20 kind of goes through the bottom of Texas. You have I-40.
See, I'm from New England too, where I thought they just made stuff up.
Yeah.
Because
as they do with so much.
Where I-95 north actually runs east.
Yeah.
And, all that good stuff.
That's just. I mean, it has to go from New York to Boston, and that requires crossing over Long Island.
Yeah.
in an easterly direction.
But anyway, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks for
it.
coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
So,
Cheers.
have a good night.
I think I was also gonna Nikita pop off and finish up episode 3 of WorstCon last.
Yay, episode 3.
Yeah, I'm just reviewing the whole video to see what was said, and I'm almost
Yeah,
done.
that's I had when I woke up the next morning, I was like, let's watch this in a sober mind, and yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be that drunk for the next special that we do at a conference.
I mean,
I was completely worthless.
You were posing serious risk to your laptop.
I know. And all the recording equipment, everything was sticky.
Yeah, it's like I saw the old video. I didn't realize you bought all that stuff, all that recording.
Yeah.
That was just for our trip.
No, that was the inspiration
meeting-
for it, but
Okay.
it's something
You've
I've
been
been
meaning to
wanting
get
to do
these
for a
things
while, and
done.
that was sort of the thing that kind of shotgunned it into like, yep, I'm
Okay.
doing it now.
Because that would have depleted the WorstCon sponsorship budget like very easily. Very easily.
True that.
I'm so jealous I missed the SourceCon thing.
I'm sorry. Were you at Coder Fair?
No, I was actually sick, so I didn't make it to Coder Fair.
Did you at least eat a sausage this weekend?
You know, I was sick, and if I'd eaten a sausage, it would have been much worse.
Okay. It's fair.
Oh,
Well,
man.
there is going to be something else next year.
Yay.
I think this was too much fun to make it a one-time thing.
Yeah, totally.
And to be perfectly honest, this is about the most responsibility I can effectively be given to
I've been
operate.
thinking about trying to do the PHP Appalachia thing again, which is a
Is
very
that a
similar
hiking
kind of thing. No, it's
a very what?
I said it's a very similar thing.
Very similar thing. Okay. So it was not.
it's
it was not a hiking camping thing.
It doesn't involve anything difficult.
Okay. It was just a meetup.
We
in
were in
Appalachia.
We were in a cabin the last time we did it in 2008. There was like a 30-person cabin.
Okay. I've gone to those things in like New Hampshire, and they usually have like a kitchen.
So this was. Yep, exactly. This was near Gatlinburg, and we had a full. I think Sarah Goldman managed to set off our alarm, and we had the fire truck come out. She was cooking bacon. So yeah, I mean that kind of stuff happened. There was a hot tub. That was crazy.
I think I've been to that place that you're talking about in Gatlinburg.
Everyone has.
And there was a hot tub, and somebody was stepping in, and they stuck their toe. They slipped, and their toe went into one of those holes, and it ripped the toenail off, kind of thing.
PHP.
Oh, actually, we do have. No, we do have a story about Here, let me look this up real quick. Cal Evans. It's a shame Keith Casey is not on the call anymore, because he would. I believe he had a full story about all of this, but his collection. And the story, as I've heard it, is that Chris Shiflett broke a glass bottle and came at Cal Evans with the glass bottle, or came at me, I'm sorry. He came at me with the glass bottle, and Cal jumped in front with his foot to block it and got his foot sliced open.
Oh my
came at you with a glass bottle in a bad way?
This was the I've heard. Obviously, I was there, but this is what I've heard.
Okay.
I'm trying to find the picture of this. It's
sorry. He
not
came
nearly as.
Wait, he came at you with a bottle, like threateningly, or just like he was giving you like, here, would you like some beer? Like I'm not following
I'm really confused.
context here.
I don't know. Actually, I have no idea.
Okay. Needless to say, I would like to get that up and running again.
I'm trying to picture. I'm trying to picture.
Your hotel
I'm
Wi-Fi.
trying to do a search for a picture. I'm telling you, it's not working.
The PHP Appalachia website is extremely green.
That's cool. That is really, really old.
It is a very bright hue of
let's-
green. Background color
Here we go.
633.
I have found the picture. Come on. Here
We
it
have
is.
a picture of somebody getting attacked at PHP Appalachia.
There's a picture of a wound. I just pasted it in the chat channel. This is a picture of Cal Evans' foot after he got stitches.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, dude, warning.
I'm sorry. Here's the picture before stitches. It's not gross. It's just towel covered in blood.
Wait.
I'd rather. Yeah, this is fun.
So here's what I actually remember from what happened there. I walked outside, and Cal and his wife Kathy, the lovely and talented Cal, are just sitting there, and Cal's like, and I'm like, oh, how are you guys doing? And Cal's like, my foot's bleeding. But he's like completely okay with it, right? And I didn't even know what's going on. And then I looked down, and there is a towel wrapped around his foot that is red. The towel is now red. I'm like, the whole towel is red.
Gosh.
But there are no red towels in this cabin. They're all white. So we had to get. No one that night was good to drive him to the hospital. But Brian Moon was sober, had not been drinking, and was good enough to drive him over there to the hospital, like at 2 or 3 in the morning or something weird like that. And yeah, it was a good night.
Crazy. I wonder if Python developers have this much fun.
Did anyone have their foot cut open at WorstCon?
No, everyone. There was no bleeding that I was aware of, and nobody was.
You gotta have bleeding. You gotta have bleeding at a conference.
Well, Chuck got sick, so that's about as close as we got to something that went.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's good.
All right, I'm gonna duck out.
I'm gonna take off too.
I said it first, so.
I think I killed the conversation.
Yeah, let's
if you want me back,
a high note of Cal's bloody foot.
If you ever want to kill your podcast, just make sure that I'm on.
You just walked all over this conversation.
I can't wait to get you on here for real, man. But I think that's actually every episode we've mentioned Cal Evans and Jeremy McCullough, and probably Sarah or Liz Smith. I think all 3 of you guys have so far been in every single episode.
That's my goal. You may not invite me, but I'm going to spam the hell out of Twitter. I was actually monitoring this for WorstCon traffic. I just had to make sure.
That's awesome.
That's my
cool,
new
guys.
social.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night, Jim. Thanks for actually popping on.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks for the participating.
And the cheese. This guy gave us at Madison PHP prepared visitor cheese packets.
Nice.
Madison. Very, very welcoming community person here.
That's awesome.
I didn't know if he might have just been trying to garner votes. I'm not sure.
But. Popes for papacy. Nice.
Cheerio,
guys.
All right, guys.
See you later.
Bye.